Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting. This is a regular meeting. It is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023. It is 9:17 a.m. This session is set to go until 12:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. Commissioner Gary Edwards joining us via Zoom and will be here in the boardroom joining us shortly. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell. We'll start off our agenda with homeless strategies update.
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning, Commissioners. Keely Marino with Public Health and Social Services. I don't have much to report today for homeless response. Outside of the Homeless Services Advisory Board, last night we met and deliberated on funding awards for our 2023 RFP. This is one of two meetings. It was the first time we've had 11 people chime in on subject matter experts from the field of homeless response, creating and making decisions for funding homeless services projects. So looking forward to that process continuing. And other than that, business as usual, but I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Keely. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions. Thank you very much.
Questions, Commissioner Menser?
I'm not sure I understood your comment when you said first time 11 folks have chimed in. Does that just mean you had good attendance for the meeting or
No, it's just that, apologies, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I just didn't understand kind of the significance of what you were saying.
Yeah, it was poorly stated. It's just that the number of homeless services advisory board members there are. It's a large group of subject matter experts chiming in on award recommendations. That's all.
Is that the full number of members of the committee?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Keely. Oh, County Manager?
Hey, Keely. Last week on the Regional Housing Council, we received a great update on the Franz Anderson. I think it will be great if you can just walk through to the commissioners where we are, because apparently a lot has happened, and I think it will be great for bringing the board up to speed on that.
Absolutely. So there was a RFP that went out looking for a developer to develop the first phase of the permanent supportive housing that will be located on Franz Anderson. There was a presentation on the chosen developer, which was Low Income Housing Institute. They will begin building shortly, but there's other funding processes that they will be going through before development continues or moves forward. And then secondarily, the tiny home village is under construction currently. There's Propel is the name of the company that is building out the tiny homes, and they expect that construction and getting it all together should be done by the end of June. And this week we're also making a decision on the operator, so who will be operating the tiny home village. There was an RFP that went out, and the deliberations on who is awarded that contract will occur this week. So things are moving very rapidly in terms of developing that site for both right-of-way activities through the tiny homes and then permanent supportive housing. And Tom popped on, so I think Tom has more to say.
Yeah, thanks, Keely. Just one more thing I did want to add to that on the Franz Anderson. So the next steps, City of Olympia will be moving forward with a purchase and sale agreement for the Franz Anderson property. And so the intent is to develop an interlocal agreement between City of Olympia, Thurston County, City of Tumwater, and City of Lacey, who are all have indicated that they intend to commit funds to this project. So as next steps, there will be an interlocal agreement that is being developed that will bring before the board for your approval to commit ARPA funds to the project. So that will be happening probably later this summer in the June, July timeframe is what we're shooting for. So just wanted to add that as well.
And
Thank
thank you. And Commissioners, next week, we have a briefing on the ARPA funds. As you may recall, you set aside ARPA funds for permanent supportive housing. So this is what Tom is speaking about. I think more conversation needs to occur. We need to get additional information as to how this contract is going to move forward. But I think that was the intent when the board set aside ARPA funds for permanent supportive housing. And that is, I can't remember the number, but we'll revisit that concept again next week when we have that briefing update on the ARPA funds for you. But the question that I have is, since this is gonna be a purchase and sale agreement with Lehigh, they will be owning the property, I believe. I think we need to make sure, since we participated with ARPA funds in purchasing the property with the City of Olympia, if there's perhaps any strings attached associated with the funding source. Nothing, we just need to make sure that we cross all the Ts and dot all the Is. If there is any strings attached associated with ARPA funds when we purchase that property with the City of Olympia. If that makes sense.
Yes?
Sorry, was that for us, Ramiro? Did you want us to follow up with one?
For
Okay,
you,
like,
for you. Really, it's really because when we talking about purchase and sale agreement is between the City of Olympia and Lehigh,
Right.
with the intent that property will be going to the ownership of Lehigh, with the intent there is going to be for permanent supportive housing for so many years.
yes.
But I think we need to make sure that we cross all the Ts and dot all the Is, since we participated with ARPA funds in purchasing that property to begin with.
Absolutely.
Right. So that's what I want to frame this conversation. As you move along into this fast-moving train, let's don't forget about some of the nuances of the process.
Great, thank you.
Any additional questions for Keely or Tom?
Maybe one, what was the name of the outfit that was,
Lehigh.
no, there was another, Michelle?
I believe it's called Propel.
Is that the one that's going to be working on the site?
They're developing the site for the tiny homes, so we'll be developing the site and then I believe constructing the tiny homes.
Is that a local group?
I'm not familiar with them. Darian Lightfoot from the City of Olympia actually, during our right-of-way meeting this morning, spoke to Propel being the outfit that's working on that project, and I had not heard of them before.
And that was some kind of a bid process?
Yes, I would believe so.
So just to remind the board, the tiny homes development, that is funded by the right-of-way initiative by the state. The county does not have financial participation in that.
Oh.
Is in the permanent supporting housing, the Lehigh is gonna lead. That's where the county and the board has set aside some ARPA funds to support that effort.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
It's the first I'm hearing of Tom Water and Lacey being involved with ARPA funds toward the Franz Anderson project. So I'm just trying to think if I have questions related to
So
that.
City of Lacey is not committing ARPA funds. I think it was, that was the initial conversation late last year, because they already committed the ARPA funds to other needs in the city, but they committed the same amount through the general fund.
Remember last year, the whole
Yeah.
conversation that happened, and it was all over the Olympia and between Olympia and Lacey. Lacey is going to use their funds for a
Police
jail,
station
a
or
police
something?
station, yeah. It was something related to law enforcement, and, but then they came back and said, while we were not using ARPA funds, we will be using general fund and we'll be,
They're committed to that, I believe, and there's in their budget this year. I don't know the source of Tom Waters' participation.
it's ARPA.
So I don't recall seeing like a breakdown of projected costs for the tiny home village versus the permanent supportive housing. It would strike me that the permanent supportive housing project is way more expensive than then creating a tiny home village. And if I'm right about that, is ARPA covering this, or is that just one piece of larger funding
For
source?
the tiny homes?
No, for the permanent supportive housing project.
No, it's a combination. I don't think it was intended to ARPA funds to cover all the costs.
Right.
There is, I
That's the
believe, some
outcome.
grants associated with that, but I think is seed money, and Lehigh is planning to apply for grants. Is that the intent, Tom?
Yes, they will, they will also be applying to the Housing Trust Fund and to the state, Housing Finance Commission for tax credits.
Yeah.
It's approximately a $25 million project in total.
Okay, and out of
The
that,
local funds will total in the vicinity of around $6 million, I believe, is the intent.
Which makes an application very strong if we have local funds committed to this larger project.
okay, those are the missing pieces.
Thank you. Just kind of out of left field here. Can someone follow up with Southport Financial? I know that with, we had given them a $1 million grant, kind of outside of cycle, because they were going to be applying to the state for a specific grant. I don't remember which one. I'm wondering if they've heard back or if we know anything on that. Is that, if they didn't, is that money gonna come back on rotation, or is it gonna just be set aside because they're applying next year? Just an idea would be great, especially as we're getting RFPs, or we're reviewing grant requests, right? And it would be great to know if there is more funding available or, not.
Yeah, I know it was 4% tax credits they were applying for. That application was due in mid-April. So I would expect they have not heard back yet on that application, but they should hopefully in the coming weeks, they should be hearing back. So,
Great,
but we'll
thank you.
continue to track that.
Thank you. For some reason, I thought it was in March, that it was due, but timeline is off in my head. Okay, so, great, thank you. Okay, with that, we will be moving on to review of Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for our meeting of May 2nd, 2023. First meeting of the month. Okay, call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Vice Chair Menser. Approval of the Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023 agenda. We have two presentations today. The first one is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month proclamation.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners, for your consideration is to proclaim the month of May here in Thurston County as Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I believe members of our community are planning to attend. Jamie, could you give us some?
Yeah, so the co-chair and program director for the South Puget Sound chapter of the Asian Pacific Islanders Coalition is planning on joining with a couple of other members to accept this afternoon.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, and then we have a second proclamation, which is Bike to Work Month proclamation.
Yeah, and again, Commissioners, this is a yearly proclamation, and during the month of May, where is proclaimed the month of May as a Bike to Work month in Thurston County. I believe we will have members of our community join us for this proclamation as well. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, we have an employee with Intercity Transit that's coming, and I reached out to our fleet services manager, who also confirmed that he can attend and accept this afternoon.
There you go.
Okay, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Had a 7 a.m. meeting. That's why it's a Bike to Work day. Okay, opportunity for the public to address the board and county managers.
I just have an update for you, Commissioners. Thurston County, once again, is continued through their Public Works Department to continue to do a great job on the operations related to all the road system here in the county. And the result of that effort is the County Road Administration Board issues a certificate of good practice on a yearly basis. And the certificate of good practice is acknowledging public works following all the many different guidelines and the state regulations to keep up with the level of service that we provide to our residents here in the county. This may not be procedural as may perceive to be, because it takes a lot of effort to get the certificate because other counties may not be receiving the certificate. And what the certificate is meaningful, it allows the county to access gas tax dollars that is distributed through the County Road Administration Board. And that's really the genesis of this certificate. I will make sure and thank the Public Works Department this afternoon, the director, as well as the interim county engineer for, again, another successful year in managing the transportation system here in the county.
Perfect. Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Questions? No? Okay. Great, no questions for me? Okay, moving on to consent items, we have quite a few. 3A through 3F. Item 3A, B, C, D are all appointments to advisory boards, and this were decisions that we made last week.
Yeah, thank you. Based on the direction you provided last week, this is your formal appointment. Begin with item 3A to Brett Netterhood to the Storm and Surface Water Advisory Committee. That's a reappointment for 3 years, with an expiration date of June 1st, 2026. Also, you provided direction to appoint Mr. Kirk Van Landingen to the Black Lake Special District for a 1.5-year term, with the term expiring on February 29, 2024. The reason as to why it has this short appointment is because that will be when the next elections at the Black Lake Special Use District will be, and at that point, whether he will be reelected or somebody else. This is a vacancy that it was provided. So you, the Board of County Commissioners, appoint an individual until the next elections can take place. Item 3C is the appointment of Mr. Scott Fraser. And this is to the Veterans Advisory Committee for a 2-year term with an expiration date of May 2nd, 2025. And item 3D is for the appointment of Mr. Anthony Moy to the Veterans Advisory Committee again for a 2-year term expiring May 2nd, 2025.
Thank you. Any questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Munson?
No, I mean, I guess I'm quite, yes, I guess, but I'm curious about the 2-year term. I mean, it's not a term that's fixed. We're just saying it's 2 years from today, because today's when we're doing it. That seems to be different than how.
It is a little bit different for the Veterans Advisory Board. It's 2 years since the board takes an action.
That's just how it's.
So
in the code. I'm just making sure, I don't have a problem. I'm just making sure that's consistent with.
we'll double check before this afternoon.
Item 3E, Emergency Services is waive bidding requirements to contract with United Way for individual assistance. And this was an item we reviewed last week and decided to move on to consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This and again, you reviewed last week. Moving into the consent agenda, the emergency services receive state individual assistance grant funds as a result of the Senate Bill 5693. With the intent to provide a communications outreach plan to determine eligibility for households in affected areas during emergencies and damage, when, particularly with flooding. In the past, United Way has been the outfit who has provided those services to the county. So there was a contract signed with United Way as a result of this grant, which the purpose of this contract was December 26, 2021 through June 6 to 30, 2023. We couldn't find a way, some documentations in which we secured the 3 quotes as recorded in procurement policy that we have. And that contract was signed for $25,000. And so the next step is for your consideration is to waive the bidding requirements to accept this contract. Again, I don't want to elaborate too much on what I presented to you last week. We're trying to just find a way as to how we can close all the loops as a result of this procurement process. I will stop there if you have any questions.
Ben, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing more I'd like to add from last week.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Muncy? Okay. Moving on to item 3F. This is a one-time financial retention bonus.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is a follow-up to the direction provided to the board. This is a formal action for you to consider. A resolution to award a one-time retention bonus for non-represented county employees who are in regular or part-time positions and actively employed with Thurston County as of May 2nd, 2023. That's when you're taking this formal action this afternoon, if that is the case. So this is a desire of the board to do something to retain the skilled and knowledgeable employees here in the Thurston County. As you know, retention is an issue, and hopefully this provides a little bit of an incentive to our valued employees here in the county. This particular action includes a full-time employees who are from 0.75 to 1.0 full-time employees for a $1,500 one-time bonus, and also for part-time employees from 0.75 or less for $750. This particular action excludes elected officials, employees in a temporary or extra help positions, employees who are part of bargaining units that includes the Thurston County Deputy Sheriff's Association, the Corrections Deputies, the Captains Association, and also excludes the court security, courthouse, district court, and local 618 unions. And again, this has been a long conversation, I believe, for the board, and this is the formal action for you to consider.
Thank you. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to employees to know that we realize that this does not begin to keep up with inflation over the last couple of years, but it was a negotiated settlement that was the best we could do with what we had. So I won't belabor that, but
Thank
that's
you.
where we're at.
Commissioner Muncy?
Just a point of clarification as to why this resolution excludes those individuals within the bargaining units, because each bargaining units may have within their contract a bonus included within that. So, or not, or they decided not to include it.
So that will conclude our consent agenda. Moving on to is there any items that commissioners are not comfortable with at this time that they would like removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Moving on to department items. Item 4A is approval of the voucher list for the week of April 10th.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. For your consideration is the approval of the voucher list for the week of April 10, 2023 for a combined amount of $2,290,541.25. This particular item is not in your consent agenda because we're still paying for items related to the tenant improvements here at the atrium.
Questions?
No questions, thank you.
Moving on to item 5A, community planning and economic development, interagency agreement between Washington State University and Thurston County.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You also reviewed this item last week. This is an annual agreement, MOU that we have with the Washington State University extension. And this MOU includes an amount of $173,072. And that has been approved within the budget that you approved for 2023. This is the document that formalized that relationship. And also this is the document in which, the instrument in which we provide funding to the extension. The executive director of the extension is here. If you'd like to have any questions, also Josh Cummins is also in John SBS Zoom, if you have any questions.
Josh, anything you'd like to add?
I appreciate that Stephen's there. I'm not sure who will be at the 2 p.m., but I wanted to say here, thank you for the partnership with WCO Extension. Our agricultural community appreciates the ongoing collaboration, and CPED appreciates that conduit with the county. So, Stephen, I leave it to you if there's more to say.
Stephen, anything?
Just want to thank you for continued support for the extension program. We serve kids in the community through the 4-H program, do nutrition education, master gardener, recycler, composter, and do programming in native plant salvage, water resources. So in addition to agriculture, pretty well-rounded program, reaches into the far corners of the community. And when I've met with you in the past, I've just emphasized that multi-leg sort of support, financial support partnership across the state, the county, and the federal government through the Farm Bill is, it's invaluable. It's always my pleasure to represent the program and the people we reach daily. So I'll also just mention that we're probably a few months later this year than we'll be next year. We've been doing a lot of work to bring in multiple agreements and funding relationships into this new MOA that's been updated, and it did several rounds between legal review at WSU and at the county. And it's really good to have it finalized because it really clarifies the funding mechanism between our two institutions. And it's does a good job of creating opportunity as well for programs where when they do need to reach out to extension, like if it's public health and they want to reach more youth and after school programs, the mechanism and the contract and the language is in place to expand or contract, from year to year in a flexible manner and be on the same timeline as the county budget, which is essential.
Any questions for Stephen or Josh?
I don't know, maybe Stephen, just because the public wonders how we're spending their money, could maybe just comment on all the different organizations and committees and such that you coordinate with to accomplish your mission and help them accomplish their mission.
Yeah, and
Shot at that? There's quite a few.
well, broad question, but I want to make sure that I touch on all the programs within Extension. Agriculture is a significant part of my work, and that's the program I lead. But we have 4 other early critical programs that Extension supports. So we're just wrapping up Master Gardener program, this coming month in June. As soon as that wraps up, we'll start looking towards a summer question and answer season, reaching people about gardening questions and resource use issues around their home gardens, and then moves very quickly into Master Recycler Composter program, waste reduction programming that runs through the fall and early winter. So a program that reaches a lot of folks at multiple ages, certainly reaches folks in the retirement age and gives them good community nexus to come out to. 3 different demonstration gardens around the county, and a lot of people reach, hundreds and hundreds of people reach through that. And of course, really successful plant sales, so people enriching their landscapes. The native plant salvage program is also finishing a native plant sale, and I think it just closed last night as of 8 p.m. So helping people access plants, get them out into communities, develop water-wise gardening, and then also working with non-point source pollution reduction out in the county with rural landowners through a hedgerow and other native planting program along waterways and wetlands and that type of thing. So Erica Gutman's been working on that through the water resources program in the county. Corey Carlton with the Master Gardener, Master Recycler program. We just had a program lead have a baby recently, Amanda Musser. She's with our SNAP Ed program. So that's been a little bit of a slow phase while she goes through her maternity leave, but that reaches also a lot of people with nutrition education programming, and she's just getting back up and running. So that, direct education in schools, how to live an active life, how to make healthy food decisions. A lot of that, as we all know, unfortunately, don't want to have a commentary on society, but if you watch commercials, you're not going to get your nutrition education wisdom from a commercial. So, or from any general TV programming. So, we need you, it's a sign of a wise community to invest in the youth, to teach them how to make healthy eating decisions. And and actually the county doesn't fund that program at all. That's funded through the state. And so we benefit from Amanda's work in the SNAP Ed program. But you contribute office space and facilitation at our county office. So a lot of value add with that program and helping people make good decisions. And then Gary, getting a little more to your question, maybe with ag, I worked on the agricultural committee. With Johanna as the chair and and everybody else there, really active committee of farmers and non-farmer members. And then also called upon in all sorts of ways throughout the county. Most of my work is in education and research in the agriculture program. We work on everything from direct marketing, helping farmers get markets, to special requests when there's pandemic funding to distribute funding for agricultural grants. I think you received last year a short summary of detailed sort of thank yous from recipients of that agriculture grant through the American Rescue Plan Act. That was probably in the 7 years since I've been here, beginning of April 2017, one of the most heartening lists of thank yous to read. I like a lot of the work I do, but when people really get help just making it through the next level of a crisis, they're very thankful. So that's a really great opportunity. So, and then, of course, last but not least, our 4-H program reaches youth throughout the county through after-school programs and clubs. And what's been interesting watching that program after the pandemic is seeing what type of programs are needed, and it's almost a rebuild phase. I think obviously the pandemic shook up a lot, and in some ways it shook up the volunteer structures for a lot of our organizations in the county. And yet the need for affordable after-school programming for kids could never be higher. So there's been a lot of new clubs popping up. We tend to think of them as sort of general use clubs. They're not maybe as focused on a particular subject like horses or raising sheep, although we still have those programs and they're very popular. But there's a lot of needs of folks that they want to just kind of dabble, see what's out there, work in robotics and sewing, in raising small animals like cavies or rabbits. So that program has been rebuilding their volunteer cohort, which has been really heartening to see because a lot of that just was on hiatus during the pandemic. So a lot of activity in a lot of those programs, rebuilding in the need in the community is as strong and stronger than ever. Big question, big answer, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
good. I think the public deserves to know what we're doing with their money. And
Yeah.
what you do to help them.
We're going to be bringing in a summary of impacts here as well and proposing a 30-minute briefing. And it's also the 50th year of the Master Gardeners, which was formed in Washington State. It actually formed in Pierce County. So I'd love to find 30 minutes to just go a little deeper, Gary, and I can present the report. We don't have to read it necessarily here, but I can give you all a copy and then feature the Master Gardeners for their 50th anniversary if that would work for a upcoming briefing.
Maybe a coffee with a commissioner.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Jamie will work with you to find a time.
Great. Yeah, both and Commissioner Mejia, that would be great.
Questions?
I don't think so. Stephen covered it. Appreciate it.
Well,
Thanks, Stephen. I'm sorry.
I just want to thank Stephen. I mean, he's been really an invaluable partner and always really available to answer any questions and provide feedback on just varying issues. So I always appreciate, reaching out and just a great partner really that WSU Extension has been. And then I saw that you offer canning classes and I was like, I need to join that. I was asking Robin about it. Me and Robin were having, and she recommended it, and I went and looked it up, and I was like, that's something I need to get on.
Tis the season, right? Starting to think about the gardens and finally gonna get 70 today and time to preserve some food later on the summer. Absolutely. Thank you very much for the kind words. Yeah.
Okey-doke.
Good to go.
Thank you.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you.
Stephen.
Commissioners,
Are you going to be joining us this afternoon?
at least online. And
Okay,
if
I think it
else
will
come
be
back.
good also to provide, the same perspective. I think the public will benefit from.
Then I'll come through.
Observation.
Absolutely. I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, moving on to item 5B, Thurston 2045, scope of work, and this is a follow-up from a briefing we had last couple weeks.
And this is related to the requirements under the Growth Management Act. And the Thurston County next periodic update will label as Thurston 2045 is due June 30th, 2025. So this never early enough to begin developing what is the scope of work of this. The Planning Commission reviewed it, the scope of work, draft scope of work on February 15 and March 15, 2023, and March 15. They provided recommendations on the, and not necessarily on the required items, those are what must do, but on the other items that perhaps doesn't, the optional items as you discussed. So the optional items the board discussed on your March 1st, April 12th, and April 18 board briefings included the implementation plan, future land use update, incorporate countywide industrial land study findings, the climate change element, the economic element, and the health element. Those are the optional items in addition to the required elements that we need to include. This item for your consideration is for you to consider adoption of this periodic update. Maya is here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Maya, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you. I don't have anything additional to add to that.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
No, Commissioner Edwards can be prepared to make that motion.
Okay. Sounds good. And then we're moving on to item 5C is set a public hearing to consider a resolution to amend the 6-year capital improvement program for 2023 through 2028.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I give the board a little bit of heads up that you will have 2 items on your agenda this afternoon. This is one of them. The 2 items that related is this 5C and also 7A that will be reviewed here in a minute. Through the approval of the budget at the state level, there was a proviso related to building improvements on 507. That's also known as the bypass in the Yelm area. That's a state route that includes 3 roundabouts. They set aside on the capital budget $21 million to construct the 3 roundabouts. And the approach that this provider took is the divide and conquer. The one roundabout is located with the Pierce County, and I believe Pierce County is going to be engaging with the state as well. And the other roundabout, the city of Yelm, is going to take the leadership and build on this piece of improvement. Thurston County is planned to help building this roundabout located at 507 and Vale Road, and that is within Thurston County. There's an approximately close to $7 million out of the $21 million that we will be receiving to deliver this project on behalf of DOT. And there's a couple of steps that we need to take in order to accept the money. One is the amendment to the capital improvement plan, the CIP, because we need to add that by state law. And this is the item before you. Item 7A is also related to that, which is setting the public hearing on the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, which also requires a board action when you amend.
And that's item 7A.
7A. So, but also you need to take an action, and you had a discussion last week on the upcoming budget amendment. And they also, you may need to consider a budget, amending the budget for 2023 for us to be able to start spending the money. Those are the 3 legs of the stool as a result of the piece of legislation. They will help build the roundabout in 507 in Bell Road. And again, go back to item 5C is for you to consider setting a public hearing to amend the capital facilities plan for May 23rd, 2023 at 3:30 in the afternoon. And Andrew is here to answer any questions related to the amendment to the CIP.
Hello, Commissioners. One additional item I'd like to point out is that we will also be requesting the waiver of the standard noticing practice per Title II, as well as Resolution 10102, which allows for shortened noticing period, not to go below 10 days, and we will be aligning with that.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and cover item 7A, since this one's CIP and this the TIP. That way we can stay on the same subject. So hold your horses, Andrew.
Matt Osman, interim county engineer. I have nothing really further to add. I think Andrew's additional comment was good and it applies to the item 7A as well, the 10-day notice period.
No, and I appreciate that clarification because we were looking at the timeline. And really the 20 days takes place when we published that. And the earliest that we can publish is this Thursday or Wednesday. So it's just 1 day shy of when we could probably have this done. So they allow us to, and because the 20-day comment period is a county requirement, and that can be deviated from the board action. But by state law, you cannot go below the 10 days minimum. This has been something the board has exercised in the past, this waiving of the 20 days. And we asked the board to consider on both items, waiving the 20-day notice, public notice period.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
I guess I would point out to the public that the only time we do waive that county requirement of 20 days is when it's beneficial to the process and we're up against a time frame that we really need to do that, so.
And we'll try to align everything to the potential action that you may take in adopting the budget amendment, which is right now is scheduled for final consideration on June 6th.
Can we have a public hearing where we take comment on both of these items, or do we have to have a public hearing, open it, take it, close it, open another one, close it?
Yeah, it's two different items that you need to consider because each one of those has a different requirements, unfortunately. You couldn't have a joint public hearing. That's my understanding.
Okay. Well, that's further questions, I guess. Item 6A, Information Technology Renewal of Annual Maintenance of Questica.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. You also reviewed this item last week. This is for your consideration to extend the maintenance contract for Questica for a total cost of $66,891.86. So you know, the Questica is a software application that we use to prepare the budget and managing the budget for the entire county. They request to add additional extension. Eventually, the ERP, the TC Connect, will replace this application. We're seeing a little bit delays on the implementation of their ERP or TC Connect, and they will give us a little more time to make sure that we have the appropriate tools to prepare the budget and managing the budget. So that is the intent of this 1 year. This is included on the IT rates. We're not asking the board to any additional funding appropriation. And I'll stop there. Sherry L. is here, the IT director.
We've had lots of discussion on this. I have nothing to question her about.
Questions? No? No questions for me? Okay, thank you. We have a public hearing today at 3:30, and it's for community planning and economic development. It's public hearing for open space tax program update form and agricultural conservation lands eligibility criteria, CPA-16.
Yeah, you're receiving public testimony this afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, for this particular item. And for your consideration, we have two actions. One is for you to close the public hearing, and the next is an option, depending on the public testimony, for you to approve the resolution amendment that the Thurston County Code Open Space Program. Again, depending on the public testimony, if you see the need for you to have further discussion, On the public testimony you might receive this afternoon, we can schedule a follow-up briefing. And the second action we'll take that at a later date. The second action is for your consideration only, as an option.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
We had an open space briefing, but it was about an application, and this one is not that. This is about.
It's related to agricultural elements. Ashley, can you elaborate on that?
Can you just remind me what this is doing?
Agricultural conservation.
Yeah, this is actually updating the board's open space tax program to expand what kind of farm and agricultural conservation land would be eligible. The briefing you just held was actually on an application to be enrolled in the board's program.
Okay, are you gonna review this afternoon I mean, I can go back through my notes, but I just need to know if we're gonna be taking action. I frankly don't recall the expansions that were being proposed. So are you gonna go over those, or should I spend some time on that?
Yeah, we're proposing to expand which lands are eligible to apply through the public benefit rating system. So predominantly they are properties that were previously enrolled in the assessor's current use open space tax program, but for whatever reason, they're no longer eligible and are looking to enroll in the board's open space tax program. And currently it is limited to properties that are either zoned LTA and are a minimum of 20 acres, or have a certain income associated with it. And in five meetings with the Agriculture Advisory Committee, they came up with a recommendation to lower that acreage requirement to 1 acre, as well as expand opportunities for folks who own land outside of long-term agriculture zoning to apply. Because most of our farms actually do exist outside of the long-term ag zone, and the median farm size here in the county is only 15 acres. So that 20-acre requirement is pretty limiting.
How far down did you say it was going? To 1 acre?
It's going down to one acre with a house on it.
And this was approved by the planning commission unanimously?
No, so the public
planning commission process, it was the agricultural advisory committee process.
Yeah, the board's open space tax program isn't part of the Growth Management Act. So it's not required to go through a planning commission review, and we thought the Agriculture Advisory Committee would have more input in terms of the structure of it as it relates to farm and agricultural conservation land.
Were they unanimously supporting this?
Yeah, so they formed a subcommittee, and the subcommittee met twice, and then they passed on ideas to the full committee, and then they met 3 times to refine the final recommendation. And we have since been keeping them up to date as it's been going through the board's process with no additional changes.
Hey, Ashley, can you remind the Board of County Commissioners when we had this briefing to them on this topic?
Yeah, it was back in March. So I think it was March 15th or 16th, one of those days.
March 15, 2023.
Oh, thank you. And it was hard. We had 2 briefings on agriculture in the same day.
The outcome of that briefing, though, was a positive for the local folks engaged in agriculture in our community. So we appreciated the direction from the board at that time to proceed with this approval.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any additional information you need before this afternoon?
No.
Have we received any public comment? Any written?
No, I've been doing targeted stakeholder outreach, and so our voluntary stewardship program work group was very positive. And Thurston Conservation District has indicated that they're in support, and then of course the Agriculture Advisory Committee, but no comments as part of the official comment period have come in outside of those stakeholders.
Thank you. And as saw it on the, I had to leave when you started your presentation to the Ag Advisory Committee, the last one, but I did see it on the agenda, so I'm glad it went well, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So, we'll either be moving forward with one or the two action items this afternoon. Okay, next is the review of the Board of County Commissioners draft agenda for the meeting of May 9th, 2023. Call the meeting to order at 2 p.m. The Pledge of Allegiance to be led by Commissioner Edwards and approval of the May 9th, 2023 agenda. We have one presentation, and it's Public Service Recognition Week proclamation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a new proclamation that where you combine all the many different recognitions that you have during the year for public employees. So in here, you will have highlighting all county employees, also highlighting law enforcement, public health professionals, and public works, and the medical services. So I believe this is a good proclamation, a good robust proclamation that highlights the all county employees and all their dedication to provide services to our residents here in Thurston County. And we'll make sure that we bring, ask heads of the offices and departments to join us next week for the proclamation.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munson? Okay, and then,
Just a reminder, I won't be at the meeting.
oh, thank you. That's right. Do you want to let everyone know what you're gonna be representing us at?
I'll be representing this region in Washington DC on some Puget Sound recovery issues. The Day on the Hill for Puget Sound restoration, and kind of based on my role in Salmon Recovery Council, I'm going with a delegation of other Puget Sound officials. So,
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Going back to the proclamation, is Maria gonna be here? I know she's got a kind of, she said she was gonna combine her, what she usually does every week, and is she going to be?
So she'll be here. I will ask her to make sure she's here. And I think what you're referring to is the recognition to employees. We'll have a little bit of activities. And we're planning to do that, I believe, in late June, early July.
Oh, I thought she said she was gonna combine it with this, but, okay, that might just.
Yeah, I think last year, remember, we had ice cream to county employees. That was a well-received activity. I believe that continues to be the case. We just need to wait until it's a little bit warmer so we can enjoy the ice cream.
Okay, great, thank you. Next is an opportunity for the public to address the board and county manager's update.
I don't have any specific updates. I will follow up any public testimony that needs to be followed up based on this afternoon's testimony.
And then we have two consent items. Consent item 3A, approval of the voucher list.
Yeah, we didn't find any specific expenditures related to the atrium, so we're moving in that direction. And this is for you to consider approving the voucher list for the week of April 17, 2023 for a combined amount of $832,487.86.
Thank you. Any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay. Item 3B from Public Health and Social Services, a resolution reclassifying position 40R01619 in the Thurston County Pay and Classification Pay Plan and the Thurston County Management and Technical Pay Plan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is on the heels of the conversation that you had on the last public hearing, when you had a really robust conversation of the HUD plan and additional responsibilities that we're going to be putting on public health staff related to the housing related activities. So this is one first step to address the needs of the staff and requirements. So this proposal for you is to reclassify a current vacant position of Social Services Program Specialist 1 to a program manager. This reclassification will better serve the needs of this particular department in relation to support the Regional Housing Council to a great extent. As you may recall, the board passed a home fund, which is generating $4 million. And if we add all the many different funding sources, the Regional Housing Council, which the county is the fiduciary responsible party, it's just about $7 to $8 million a year that we are currently managing and supporting many aspects of homelessness and supportive housing here in the county. This is again the first step to address the staffing needs. This particular action has a budget impact that goes from $6,646 to $8,300. That will be an increase of $1,654 or 24.8% increase on a monthly basis. This is going to be covered for the many different sources that come to the county to support that. It will not be funded by the general fund to a great extent. And so I will stop there. We have David and Tom here. If you have any questions related to this item.
Thank you. Anything, David, you would like to add?
I'll actually turn to Tom for any specific things you want to add, Tom.
No, I thought the county manager gave a really good summary. Happy to answer any questions, but as to reiterate, with the increase in the home fund, we really have seen a substantial increase in our affordable housing dollars. And so looking for additional staff capacity to make sure we can support the oversight of those new funds.
Thank you. Questions?
This will be an at-will position.
No, it's not. It's not in that position.
Is the position going to be in charge of $7 to $8 million?
No. It's going to help managing that. No, this position is part of the Tom's and the Public Health Department team. Ultimately, that the management of the funds are so many different ways, so many different programs. So this particular person will help manage that aspect, but it will not be responsible entirely. Ultimately, the director is responsible for all the funds and the distribution, how we manage the financial aspects of any grants, and based on the direction the board provides. Did I answer your question, sir?
Yeah. Do we have somebody in the position now?
No, it's a vacant position. So and the need is just growing. We just signed an interlocal agreement with all the jurisdictions that really paves the path. Maybe we signed that maybe a month ago, where really outlines all the many different funding sources that comes through the Regional Housing Council.
So the upper range is what we're really changing.
Right.
And we don't automatically go to that point.
Unlikely, there's always, assessment as to where we place a new employee, depending on the experience, but it's unlikely that we'll bring an employee to the top scale.
Okay.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Munson? Okay. No questions for me. Thank you. Moving on to department items. Items 4A from the Commissioner's Office, Cooperative Purchasing Contract to replace Thurston County's housing management system.
So, let me state this item. So finally, we're here with this item for your consideration. And this item is going to be replacing the InfoPath application that we have. The InfoPath is the software application that we use to process all the agendas for the board. And the last software update for the InfoPath was in 2016. And we have not seen any updates because this application is obsolete. Since we have been really chugging along as to how we can make it work through the process, we have seen a lot of gaps, and you have been experiencing some of the gaps when we don't have a very robust and stable system here. So we began this process back with the previous clerk of the board to explore some options. We were in the process to do something back in 2021, 20, I believe, but you can blame everything on the pandemic. when Jamie Cowell came as the clerk of the Board of County Commissioners, I asked her to go back and start looking at those options because something that we need to address in providing a more stable software to manage the public meetings, the agenda item summaries, and the overall agendas for the Board of County Commissioners and the Board of Health as well. So here we are, and in 2022, we have a couple of quotes, and we concluded perhaps this particular outfit is the one who is going to be providing the best services to what we need here in the Office of the County Commissioners and the county as a whole. So this particular item is for you to contract with SHI International Corporation for $220,000 for $220,055.69. That's for a 3-year period, which includes on the first year $60,001, and the second year is $58,000, and the third year $60,000. How are we going to be paying for that? On the first year, we're going to be paying through the IT rates, we'll have some savings. And the last 2 years will be distributed on the internal rates as we have any IT application that you're familiar with. So with that, I will give the floor to Jamie because she has a lot more vested interest on this and more knowledge as to how we are here with this item for your consideration. Jamie.
Thank you. So, excuse me, the Commissioner's Office got together with quite a few other team members. So we had Public Information Office, the Budget Team, and the IT Department, all in collaboration to come up with a list of needs that the county would need to have in the next product that we stand up to replace this. We reached out to 5 different vendors who did demonstrations for us, 2 of which really were more set up for the private side, not so much public. And so they weren't really going to be a very good fit because it was about locking everything down, keeping everything to who needs to see it. So the 3 that were more set up for public meetings, we requested quotes from. And out of those 3, Granicus is the vendor that we found that would probably be the best fit for us all around. They met our needs list as close as they possibly could, and more so than the other couple of vendors did. They're also one of the most widely used vendors in this area. There's 10 other jurisdictions that utilize their software to conduct their public meetings. But it creates quite a bit more transparency. It makes our documents much more easier to access, not only for staff, but members of the public that go to get them. It kind of creates more of a collective area that they can go back to look at things. So once, resolutions are passed and signed or ordinances are passed and signed, we can reattach them in one spot. So not only staff, but members of the public can access them real simply. We also think that it'll probably, with ease of access, help cut down on some of our public records requests that we receive through our office because they'll be able to access the documents all on their own. It adds a lot with the video side of it as well because they can queue up. There was links that it can create through our videos. So instead of us having to go back to, we know this one person came in for public comment, it'll have a whole public comment spot that we can just click right to, go to the public comment. We can go directly to specific items on the agenda and it'll have links to that to go to them. It's got more ease of access for our constituents and stuff with disabilities. Closed captioning is provided within the software system. They provide us with training, stand-up support. They're all around a really great software to have. And considering that I think it's 2026, Microsoft is going to stop supporting InfoPath. It's going to be all on IT. So if something breaks, we may not have a way to fix it.
Also add, in addition to the streaming capabilities for our meetings, there's a feature we could use for people to sign up for testimony. There's voting where we could automate the voting for the board and have it recorded that way. It automates the minutes and transcribes them, so transcripts will be available. There's a closed caption option for our meetings, and it's not only for Board of County Commissioner meetings. We will be able to use this tool for all types of meetings across the county and make it available to all of our advisory boards. So for this price, we get a really big, benefit.
And I forgot about the advisory boards portion as well. It does help track like expiration dates, vacancies, you know, things like that. A lot of these processes that we're having to currently do by hand, it'll take away and provide more staff time to be available to do other things as well. I believe it also allows them to have access to templates. We can put it so that all the templates would be standardized, their minutes as well. So it would help them as well. And then, gosh, what was the other thing? Trying to think, there's so much with it that I feel like I'm leaving stuff out.
The materials will be available to you and the public. It's just the, what we perceive as the incredible support for our meetings is just, it's gonna be something we've never had
I
before.
believe too that they have the side-by-side option as well, so when you guys are conducting your meeting, it'll also allow us to have the agenda actually up side by side with the video, so that the members of the public joining by Zoom can also, and as well as staff members can follow along with it right inside the meeting itself.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
Was there an RFP that went out?
We did not do an RFP, but we did go through a, vendor process, if you will.
Master contract that we have with the state.
There's a master contract that we're purchasing Granicus off, but we did go through a process where we reached out, as Jamie said, to a variety of vendors. We had demonstrations from 3 vendors and selected this one. Again, we went through, before ever talking to the vendors, we went through an internal process to determine our needs, requirements, if you will, for IT system, and then we selected the vendor that best fit our needs.
One nice feature that it does have as well that I just remembered was the workflow. You can build in workflow. So if you need risk to review something, you build in a workflow that, you know, it sends it off to risk. If the system doesn't have a response from the person you send it to within a certain amount of time, it'll start sending them reminders. If they're out of office, it'll automatically reroute it to whoever's covering for them so that it prevents work stoppages for when we have staff out of office. Maybe they don't know who they need to send it to in that staff member's absence.
Robin, can
Items will go through legal.
you elaborate on the master corporate purchasing contract that creates that umbrella for us to go
Right,
with
so,
and get bids?
practice that is authorized in state law and we have guidance from the state auditor's office, it's called piggybacking. And that is where, the state has master contracts that we can purchase off of, but also, under state law, we're allowed to work with other jurisdictions who have gone through the bidding process, form a collaboration and purchase off of their contract, but it has to have been formerly bid and gone through the RFP process. So at one point, Granicus did win an RFP bid, and we are piggybacking off of that contract to be able to purchase them without going through our own RFP. But we didn't, again, you know, I want to be very clear, we didn't just reach out and say, hey, I like this thing over here. We went through a process which took us over a year to select this vendor.
The name of the vendor again, because this says SHI International.
This SHI is the parent corporation. The product that we're using is called Granicus.
I'm good.
Granicus.
I'm the one that knows the least on the whole thing. Sounds great to me.
Oh, this is gonna streamline the process to manage all your meetings and meeting minutes, public here. It's just absolutely, it was about time the county is stepping up to the 21st century.
I can get you a list of the vendors as well, or the other jurisdictions that use it. You're more than welcome to check out their sites and see like what they, I mean, they're all a little different because they tailored them for how they want their software to look. But I mean, you can at least get an idea of the features that they offer through watching some of their meetings and stuff.
My teammates might be interested in that.
Questions, Commissioner Munson?
Are any of those jurisdictions local? I mean,
So the ones that we have here in Washington are Bellevue, Camas, King County, Longview, Olympia, Redmond, Seattle, Snohomish, Tacoma, and Whatcom County. Yeah. Mhm.
And the funding is coming from,
IT rates, this year, there's gonna be funded, the first year is gonna be paid by IT reserves, that we have a little bit of capacity in there. The next 2 years will be distributed on the normal,
60/40
60/40,
business or
yeah.
whatever.
About time.
It was really impressive to see their demo too. I mean, especially when I took the time to go look at some of the other local jurisdictions and how they've all set them up. Like I said, they're all a little different, but it's really impressive.
Also, if the board approves this software, as any change, there's gonna be a little time of training, getting used to the new, so there's gonna be a little bit of getting to know the software, a little bit of patches in between. So, if the board approves, I will ask for a little bit of patience, from everyone until we can, all of us get, familiar with the new application.
Yeah, I know this was something that even the past clerk was looking into. I mean, for me, it was frustrating when Yakima County was way ahead of us and they updated their system and we were still looking for systems that would fit. And I was just like, let's get the ball rolling, Thurston County. So I'm really happy to see this. My question is in terms of kind of in part what you mentioned, the training, updating the system, you know, the transferring of information from one system to another, right? What is that going to entail? Is this going to be a request later that we're gonna be seeing, like, we need a part-time person to come and help us with this? So I just,
So,
trying to get ahead of the ball here and
Appreciate it.
just,
No, I think I know exactly what you're saying, and I appreciate that perspective.
yeah, that is a great question. So as we go into 2024, one of the budget requests that you will see from my office is the board has approved a position within IT to support the implementation of the ERP, specifically the budget module. And I will be requesting to remove that end date and keep the tech person embedded. It's an embedded position, but reports to IT. And that person would support Oracle Budget, OpenGov, Balancing Act, this system, and any other tech for the commissioner's office.
Okay.
So that is coming.
They do also provide training, that quote does provide training to, get the core staff trained up as they're standing it up. And they also do an audit of our forms as well. So we could potentially, a lot of what we currently use may be able to be kept as like the same template if they can convert it over in their system.
So my next question, it's what's the expected timeline for this, right? We approve this and then kind of what are the next step? When are we gonna get the system? When are we gonna start training and when is it gonna be implemented and outward facing?
My understanding is once you guys approve, then we can start moving forward with getting a purchase order in place so that we can get it paid for. And then they would immediately get the contract signed and then immediately start working on the initial like form audits and things like that to start the process. I believe the whole process to stand it all up is about a year, give or take, to have it properly stood up so that we don't have it break majorly on us.
Okay, and so then that's when the position that you're thinking about shifting.
Right. The end date on that position is December 31 of this year. And I will, in the budget process, be asking you to remove the end date and make the position permanent.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Item 4B, South Sound Military Intelligence Partnership Memorandum of Agreement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenica Machado is not able to join us this morning, but she will be next week presenting this item. As you may recall, Thurston County is part of the South Sound Military Communities Partnership Organization. We are part of the steering committee. And in fact, I believe there is a breakfast to elected officials scheduled for next Thursday morning on May 11th. I don't know who is able to participate. Another Commissioner Mr. Mejia is out of the office. I don't know if Commissioner Edwards will be able to attend. But this partnership really frames the work as to how Thurston County values our military community. As you know, we have a big presence in our Thursday, May 11th. 7:30 is up in the golf course and the base. And so we're in the process of amending the MOU, and this is the item for your consideration. There's one change. We usually pay for the annual fee of $6,500. As we know, the cost of doing business goes up, so this MOU include $8,500, an increase of $2,000 a year. I believe there is a well worth investment to be part of this organization and provides Thurston County a voice related to any aspects related to the military community here in our region.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Answer?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Maybe I'll circle back on the kind of, what is it that, the partnership entails? I'm not really clear on that.
We are part of the steering committee, and the membership changes. We're not part of the executive committee. The executive committee requires a contribution of maybe $60,000 a year. And right now, the only ones who belong to the executive committee is City of Lacey, Pierce County, JBLM, and Lakewood. So the steering committee, we were part of, I think TRPC is included. There's a lot of membership on that. Jenica attends on our behalf. And there's a lot of movement related to not just federal lobbying activities, but also state lobbying activities. And also how we can be intentional in the activities. The active military community has an impact on our region. So you've heard the economic impact the military has in our region, and it's very significant. And the billions of dollars they contribute to our economy. And not just the economy aspect, but also how we can welcome those military members to be part of our communities. Lacey in particular has a lot of presence of military communities, families, and so on and so forth. And also we have significant veterans, military veterans here in Thurston County. The last number that I checked, I think it was close to 25,000.
I think maybe
30,000. So, and when we have those, military personnel get assigned to JBLM, and they see this as a beautiful area to remain after they leave the military, and that's how we see. I believe this is really a good option for us to be part of that conversation as to how we can be part of any potential solutions.
Our congressional folks are very active with that too.
It works a lot like LOSAC, but just for issues that overlap the military and the surrounding communities.
Okay.
So they go over kind of what those, we get an update. The reason I like to go is for what Commissioner Edwards just said. Congressman Heck and Congresswoman Strickland are always front and center. So you always get a good report from your federal delegation. And then you kind of hear what's going on at JBLM and what they're concerned about. If the airport thing hadn't gone the way it did, I bet that would be a big issue this year. But, that sort of got taken care of in the interim. But there's always a sort of set of priorities that they're trying to organize ourselves around so that we speak with a common voice when we speak to our federal legislators and stuff about things that affect our communities that surround the military base.
Sorry.
I just have a follow-up question on, you mentioned the executive committee, and it's like, what are we missing out of if we're not a part of the executive committee? Is there something where they get information first, or like, what is it like?
The executive committee makes the decisions based on the recommendations by the steering committee.
So we're on the steering committee.
We're in the steering committee.
If we had the money, it'd be good to be on.
Instead of 60,000
I
a
thought you
year.
said 8,000.
No,
8,500 went up with this new MOU, 8,500.
8,500 now?
It was 60.
No, for the steering committee, for the executive committee is 65,000. And I broached the subject.
Veterans Fund?
Because that's not a benefit to indigent veterans.
Oh, so it's, okay.
It's general fund.
It's good to have a relationship with Lacey on this, though.
We partnered with Lacey, I mean, in so many areas, I think this is good to be partnered with this. So I broached this subject maybe 3 years ago to be part of the executive committee. But the conversation really goes down to the dollars and cents in the capacity of the general fund.
And the chair going to the meetings.
Well, that's what it is.
That was a quick voluntold there. Okay, thank you. If there's interest for the 60,000.
We can always up our contribution. This is just the status quo.
Happy to steer, not execute.
Okay, yeah. I don't think we have.
Relationship with Lacey kind of gets us in
Yeah,
there.
I don't think we have, maybe it's something to consider next year as we go to 5 and there's more widespread availability for committees, capacity, and I just don't think right now, yeah. There's an interest in the commissioners, okay? So. And then our last department item is Public Health and Social Services, item 5A, approval of contract amendments for reallocation of PY 2022 CDBG funds.
Yeah, thank you. This is related to the Community Development Grant Block Program, the CDBG. As you are well aware, we receive a contribution in the region that includes all the areas in Thurston County except for the city of Olympia. The city of Olympia gets a yearly contribution because they qualify as an urban area. Lacey also qualifies as an urban area, but they decided to be part of this process for the next couple of years at least, where we give the annual distribution on a rotation basis. 1 year goes to Lacey, they make the determination as to how the grants will be allocated to the related to the CDBG money, then goes to Tumwater, and then goes to the county. And the county works with the south cities to distribute the CDBG money. So that is the context of this item. Back in 2020, it was the city of Lacey's turn to distribute funding under the CDBG money. So they allocated $210,926 to Home First to acquire and rehabilitate affordable rental housing in Lacey. At the time of the application, the specific project was not identified by Homes First. But Home First since has determined the intent to construct 2 accessory dwelling units, also known as ADUs, in properties they already own. So that put a little bit of an interesting conversation because a portion of the allocation they receive may not be qualified to build ADUs. Under the HUD requirements, CDBG money, we will not be able to be eligible for those activities. So that put us in a somewhat in the conundrum as to what we need to do with the remainder, which is $107,000 out of the $210,000 allocation to Home First. So we asked the city of Lacey to see if they have any opportunities to redistribute the money within the own jurisdiction, and they returned said they don't have any projects because under the CDBG there is timelines in which we need to spend the money. So again, we would got invented as to how we can use the $107,000. So this proposal is really to take the $107,000 from the two and allocate to the Tenino Quarry renovation project of for $77,000 and to enhance the Haasfield improvements for an additional $30,000. So that's how we are going to be able to meet the requirements of the CDBG money and some of the issues that the city of Lacey had. I think it has been a good exercise, and again proves at the point of regional coordination is always helpful as to how we can probably benefit not just one jurisdiction, perhaps sometimes the whole county entirely. I know that Alex is here to provide additional perspective. If you have any questions, go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, commissioners. I have nothing to add, but here for any questions. Well, but the connection.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
What was going on in the background there? I don't have any questions.
It was there.
Oh, okay, good enough.
Questions, Commissioner Menzer?
What, on the Haas Field, what is this, how does this fit into what's already been allocated and what's already been done?
So, as you may remember, when the hospital improvements, there were more improvements they wanted to do than the money was allocated to.
Right.
So I think this will complement, I think it's including a little bit of defense work. But I can give you the details to what we can do with the additional 30,000. Because, the hospital, when they came up with additional improvements, there was a gap. Maybe Alex has information as to what the hospital can do with additional money.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in the office, so there's some background noise. Hopfield is planning to re-gravel the main lot and the third lot in their parking lot with an extra 30,000.
Who is that we work with at Hosfield? I remember that was back when we first got this thing going. It was a question of who owned it and who would be responsible for the money, and we had to do some legal.
Yeah, we resolved that. I can't remember the outfit, but finally we landed on who was the responsible party. Do you recall, Alex, who is the one who holds the contract?
We currently have an MOU with Public Works.
Okay, that's Public Works is managing the improvements. That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, Public Works then is the one making the call on like what $30,000 would best be deployed to do?
I don't believe so. I think it was some feedback from the members of the hospital. Is that right, Alex? Yeah.
There was like issue of bathroom, fencing. I can't remember how much we ended up, like prior to not counting this, what did we spend and what did it get done versus what didn't get done? I'd be curious to hear that.
Do you have that information, Alex, or maybe for next week if you don't, as to what improvements did we deliver on the initial allocation for Hosfield?
I know that this spring they've been working on some of the field work, but I can check in with Public Works and get you an update for the meeting
next week.
Yeah, also I don't remember the Hosfield project.
It's because it's really old. This was like 2019, my first year on the board.
2019.
So I'm like.
And it's taken forever. That's why you don't remember.
And I'm still licking my wounds out
Yeah.
of that process, to be honest with you, Commissioner.
It was difficult to get money for Rochester at all, because it was the first year they ever qualified.
Okay.
And so the mayors sort of already had sort of an allocation, but then Rochester qualified, which was unexpected. So Ramiro and I were advocating that they should be sort of part of the calculus. And we did end up getting money, but then there were two things, and
it was two
it's
projects.
quite difficult in Rochester because there isn't a municipal government, like there's no, like we're responsible. I mean, that's the weird thing about it is they've got a community down there, but like there is no, you can't just like write a check to the city council or to the city administrator. There's no city.
And there was two projects that located under that.
Yeah, there was the Independence Field.
It was the Independence Field, the Independence
Park
Park.
School District.
We rebuilt the playground and the hospital improvements. But the improvements of the hospital was more than the allocation, so this is.
It was difficult because Hosfield was under the ownership of like this, it had a bizarre legal status. There was like a committee and it wasn't clear, like, So in terms of making sure that, you know, that people were accountable for the money and responsible, we had to sort of go through the legal analysis with our lawyers of who actually owns this and who would be getting them. That's why Public Works is essentially stepping in and managing things, because there wasn't, Hosfield is like a community set of fields closer to the freeway, just north of Highway, what is it, 512 there? And, or Highway 12. And they use it. I mean, I've watched my kids play soccer there, but it needed a lot of help. And so.
It's a good community project for sure. But Commissioner Messer recalls extremely well the nuances as to who can probably be the organization can take the money, be fiduciarily responsible to manage the contract. And we found so many dead ends on that, so thank you to Public Works.
Getting this, but this was like 2018 CDBG money or 2019?
2019.
Okay, so I was trying to remember, I was like, I don't remember this. So, okay. So more to come next week.
Yeah, if we can get some information related, what improvements we did on hospital based on the initial allocation.
Okay. And then at 4:30, we will have a Board of Health meeting. And then our next item on our agenda is review of the Board of Health draft agenda for our meeting of May 9th. Okay, we'll take a break and then Commissioner Mayhew will pick it up. 15-minute break.
Thank you.
Back to the Board of County Commissioners agenda setting, and it's Tuesday, May 2nd. We're picking up with item number 4, which is reviewing next week's draft agenda for the Board of Health meeting. I will be participating through Zoom, and I'm going to be asking Vice Chair Maria Williams to lead the meeting. And it's a fairly short agenda, but we do want to cover one of the topics because we do have a kind of a hefty meetings projected for June. And then potentially a canceled or not canceled, but a non-scheduled meeting for July based on the commissioner's break. So the meeting will be called to order at 4:30. We'll ask for approval of the agenda. We'll have an opportunity for the public to address the Board of Health. We will do a proclamation regarding National Nurses Week. And Gretchen Toller is listed here. Program Manager, our Director of Public Health Social Services, David Bain, is online. Anything you or a clerk would like to say about the proclamation?
I believe she's putting together a group of nurses to come in and accept, is my understanding. I'll double check and confirm with her
Yes.
who exactly she has coming.
She is. It'll be primarily school nurses.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners about National Nurses Week? Okay. The next item, and it's going to be the main item for this board's meeting, is it's kind of a redo of what the Board of County Commissioners heard from both our Ben Miller-Todd from Emergency Services and the two main hospitals leaders who gave a really good presentation. I think all of the Board of County Commissioners thought that it was a presentation that the Board of Health should see. So it's going to be substantially similar, but with a chance for Board of Health members to ask questions about that presentation, which relates to the Thurston County health care system overall and some of the current challenges that are being faced, of which we're well aware. David, who are the guests for this one?
Yeah, you were correct. It's going to be the CEO of Multicare and the CEO of Providence. So Will and Darren will both be there, in addition to Ben Miller-Todd and myself.
Questions from board members? Okay, so that'll be good, and we'll have plenty of time for any questions and a discussion. Then we'll just, we'll have our health officers report, and we're gonna have David's gonna give a few updates on some items, I'm asking that he can kind of tell us where the fiscal subcommittee stands and what's on tap for June, because I know we have 3 or 4 pretty meaty items for June, and hopefully this whole agenda will take, an hour or so.
I do have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe, I know we did last time and time before, we did a fentanyl presentation with all the deaths and the numbers and all that kind of thing. I don't think we tied that in at all with the federal numbers. Do you guys get those through? I mean, seems to me there's like 100,000 or 200,000, I don't know, a bunch.
Overdose deaths?
Yeah, overdose deaths. So to see how we compare, with the rest of the country.
Gotcha.
Maybe
Yeah.
Dr. A could report on that?
I was going to make the same suggestion. Maybe what we'll do is in her update, Commissioner, we'll just give we'll give a quick update on county, state, and federal national numbers for overdoses. So you can kind of see where we rank on that.
Yeah, just to see where we're at, because I think it's pretty important to the public to know what a serious problem we're dealing with. Thank you.
Yep. Nope, I agree. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, proclamations and awards and advisory boards and commissions.
So for proclamations and awards outside of what's already been reviewed, I have no further updates. The one item on your list currently for the Fair Board, I need to amend that because it is no longer a request for removal. Yesterday afternoon, I did get a letter of resignation from the individual on the Fair Board indicating they were going to resign. So I will get the list below updated and remove that one for next week's meeting. Excuse me. For the there is the standing application for the Student Agricultural Advisory Committee applicant. It's been included again for your review. The committee meets, I believe it is on the 18th this month, and I did indicate to the chair that the board is requesting an appointment recommendation. Based on my correspondence with the chair, I think he's confused about the process to expand this committee. He keeps referencing that he's trying to follow the OPMA and Robert's Rules of Order in our communications as he's been advised to do, and was attempting to kind of explain how the process is supposed to work. So I reached out to CPED staff to find out if there's anything that required a specific process to be followed to expand this advisory committee, and the answer they came up with was no. So long as the motion contains all the information required for that seat to be added, like the term, category, criteria, et cetera, then the board can just appoint to the position. And at that point, the committee can then amend their bylaws to account for that addition. So outside of any questions, that's all I have.
Questions, Commissioner Edwards?
No questions, thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Munzer?
Yeah, I think it's covered. I just wanted to make sure. It looked like there was. Okay, I'm good. So we're waiting on Mr. Hay for the.
Yeah, I'd let them know that the board is requesting an appointment recommendation and did advise that if one isn't received, that I anticipate the board will probably make a decision on whether or not to appoint at that time, but they are gonna give, you guys were gonna give them the time to review it and supply us with that recommendation. His correspondence back to me stated that it was his understanding after speaking with Commissioner Mejia that they were supposed to provide you guys with a recommendation to expand the committee. Then you guys make the motion, and then they would expand and then provide an appointment recommendation. And that's where I went to CPED and was like, is there a process that has to be done to expand this? I just want to make sure that we're following it right, and there isn't. Basically, if the motion's worded, properly to, move to appoint this this particular individual to a student seat for and as an ex officio member for a 2-year term, which would match the other terms for this particular board, then you can do that, and then they go to amend their bylaws.
While we're all chewing on that, the Historic Commission says 12 spots and 8 of them are empty, so they only have 4 members.
Yeah, it's very scant.
Need some old people to sign up.
So can't even make a quorum if they have any particular action items necessarily.
That's a hard recruitment. That's a very hard recruitment.
Some of those are their alternate members, though, so they don't have the alternates actually appointed. Those would stand in for, I'm not sure if it's when members are absent or if it's when a member leaves and then they'll just take in for the seat. So I believe they would end up having a quorum if you don't count those alternate members.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I was counting alternates. Okay, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they have 7.
Yes. Yeah, it's still scant. It's still very scant.
They have 7 out of 12 seated, and then all 3 alternates are open. Okay. Okay. That's more in line with what I thought. I didn't think they were down to 4, but 7, yeah, we still need to.
I guess, again, for the advisory committee, give them the clear direction that the board has already done this, that all they would need to do is include it in their bylaws, but, if at the next one, at their next meeting, which is, I believe it's in a month, they don't make a recommendation, then the board will move forward with this. I'm struggling with what the confusion is here. I mean, I've told Mr. Hannah the same thing that you have, that, he was the one who, when we spoke, that recommended this position. I brought it in front of the board. The board said yes, and we moved forward with that, and then we advertised it, and we have an applicant. So I'm just really struggling.
I was wondering if it was a breakdown in communication between myself and the staff contact and the chair, or what it was, which is part of why I did reach out to CPED, find out exactly, because I didn't want to point fingers and accuse, but what exactly is that staff contact's role? What all do they do? And it sounds like everything was on the up and up. I mean, I've communicated straight to her straight over to the chair, vice versa, back and forth. The chair does tend to he will communicate with me directly sometimes, but so that's also why I went to verify the process to expand them, to make sure that there wasn't something I was missing. And it doesn't look like there is. There's nothing that requires a particular process for them to expand.
Is this communication going back and forth by text or on the
Email.
phone? or
Email.
Email? Is there any chance somebody could talk on the phone? with-
I told them this at their last meeting, because they were reviewing the ex officio position and this position, and I was like, this is kind of way, the board has already discussed this, because they were talking about passing recommendations to the board, and I was just like, the board already decided this, and they were aware that a article went out with kind of promoting the new position, so, I was just like, the board already approved this, this position is empty, it's official, all you have to do is add it to, your bylaws. So I have done that. I'm not sure if they understood me or not, but
I think part of the problem too is that when I'm not, without anybody else being present for the conversation as well, there have been times in the communications from the chair, he indicates something completely different that he was told by Commissioner Mejia. And when I speak with her, it's like, no, that's not what I told him. So I'm almost
I've only had
hesitant.
one conversation with him, so there's not been.
Talk to him on the phone. Maybe there's something being lost in it. Maybe the words change or something when you send stuff by text. I don't know. It just seems more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, and I spoke with Mr. Hanna once, and I remember it because it was after the Pack Mountain retreat that I had back in. It was this year.
It was recent.
Earlier this year.
It was like 2 months ago.
It was like ice on the, I remember there was ice all over the place. Because I had to come back for a meeting.
Yeah.
And that was defrosting the car, it took forever. But yeah, I remember having that conversation with him, and that's when he made the recommendation, and I brought it in front of the board of the Agriculture Advisory Committee is recommending, or they're wanting a youth representative, and so, Jamie, I guess just kind of clarify that the board, again, has already approved this position. And if you want to loop me into that conversation, I'm more than happy to be looped in, but again, I explained this at the previous Ag Advisory Committee that I attended.
And in the last correspondence that I received from him is that he specifically says that the commissioners have directed that the committee is to provide a recommendation to expand, and then you take action. And I'm like, that's not exactly what Commissioner Mejia is saying that she has spoken with you about. So I'm a little hesitant to do conversation via phone because I don't have, written documentation of what's said at that point, and it's kind of just a he said, she said with as much confusion as there already is.
So then I guess it'll be my office that responds. I mean, if that's okay with the board.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Then it'll be just clear and concise, and I'll have Ramiro then forward it to commissioners and.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. PIO check-in.
Good morning, Commissioners. Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I have no updates this morning.
Okay. Any questions for Megan?
No questions.
Okay. Legislative update.
I don't have I briefly give you a summary of some of the legislative actions last week. So I'd really like to thank Deborah Manguia, our lobbyist, for all the work that she has done for the county. So she's on a well-deserved vacation for the next 2 weeks, but maybe I can ask her to come maybe late May, early June, to provide the board an overall overview of the legislative session that we just had. And then she will be available for you to ask any questions. But I'm planning to do that after she comes back from vacation.
Thank you. Question?
On legislative things, I do have a question, and I'm not sure that I've got the facts right, but it seems to me last Friday or Friday, I think it was, there was just catching pieces of news, maybe in and out of the car, that there was a new ruling by the court, the Ninth Circuit, on homeless, what governments could and could not ask homeless folks to do as far as blocking sidewalks and sleeping in parks and different things. But I haven't heard any more, but I haven't had a chance to watch the news. So I'm just wondering if anybody here heard anything about that, or maybe I misconstrued some information that I only heard a piece of. Anybody hear anything different on that topic?
I have not, Commissioner, but let me do some research.
That's my only legislative question. Thank you.
Okay, and so there will be, can this be a separate work session? That way we can get like,
Yeah, we'll organize maybe for an hour or so.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Maybe another piece of an update is as you know, the Senate Bill 5536, which deals with Blake decision as a whole, did not pass, and I believe the governor is going to be calling a special session maybe today to bring back the legislature to address this issue, because anything will lapse at the end of June. And in this bill 5536, it was very comprehensive in nature, and it is unfortunate because I believe, this is just my humble perspective, how the bill stalled in the legislature on simple possession, whether it's going to be a gross misdemeanor or simple misdemeanor. That conversation didn't, I think it was a little bit of different perspectives from the House and the Senate. But again, it is unfortunate that the rest of the bill, which I believe 99% of the bill was absolutely on point. They include some good directives as well as funding associated with it. So you may probably have heard that some local jurisdictions may be taking an action absent this new law to start imposing simple possession to be some simple misdemeanor. Some may go with a gross misdemeanor, which is going to create a huge confusion no matter where we go and what we do. So yesterday, we convened a group of, here in the region, Commissioner Messer attended a meeting. The initial meeting that Leah Landon scheduled for yesterday was under the assumption that 5536 will pass, and the meeting was going to be how we're going to be able to meet the requirements of the new law. But the meeting yesterday was good in nature, because what is it that local jurisdictions can do? And I think it was two main goals that we need to be consistent across hopefully all the jurisdictions here in Thurston County. Whether they pass resolutions on identifying simple possession as a misdemeanor with gross misdemeanor and not. But also, I think a key piece of this bill in the conversation yesterday was related to diversion services. The LEAD program, the pretrial services, that provides a good element for those individuals to be diverted from jail mainly, and to give them the opportunity to find the resources to go through treatment. So that's really what is going on. I don't know if Commissioner Messer would like to add on the meeting that we had yesterday. That's the key points that I got out of the meeting yesterday. We will continue to move in the direction to, as a region, to do something. I don't know what that something will be in terms of legislative, but if the legislature on the special session addresses this issue, then we will stop on that process of doing something here locally.
Can you tell me there was Chief Almada from Lacey, there was Yale Carlson, he's a new chief, right?
Yeah, from Yale.
Yeah, and then there was Alan, is that a?
From the city of Olympia.
Olympia, okay, I wasn't sure because it didn't have his jurisdiction. Yeah, so, and Sheriff Sanders was there,
Yep.
so Tumwater wasn't there, right?
No.
Law enforcement wise? No. Okay, but they had a report from the prosecutor, it seemed like Christy Peters.
Yeah,
was
Christy
sort of
Peters and
speaking-
Wayne were there
They're sort of speaking for Tumwater.
Yeah.
Because they have that contract with Tumwater. Yeah, I mean, it was clear that Lacey was like charging full, like they've already got they had a I couldn't understand what he was saying about how they revised some previous.
I think they, prior to, this stopgap that ends on June 30th, I believe the city of Lacey was already trying to do something.
They were thinking about doing something
Yeah,
else
so
anyway.
I think the ordinance has been revived.
Well, they already had kind of something in hand that they were working on.
Right.
That's at Dave Schneider's, with their lawyer's review. Ramiro proposed the county also basically preparing an ordinance for discussion that, because I think it makes a lot of sense to be consistent. And Sheriff Sanders was supporting that, as was one of the other speakers, Carlson, I think, from Yelm. We're all supporting like wanting to have a consistent approach. Makes a lot of sense because you really don't want communities competing with each other. I mean, if it's less, punitive at one place and then people flow to that place. I mean, it's not a good approach for this type of a situation to have a patchwork of inconsistent. And what's got me concerned is that everybody was on board with prioritizing treatment, diversion. That's what the failed bill was prioritizing. But there was some pieces in place and that are not gonna, if we're all going at it individually, it's obviously not gonna be state supported. And so making sure that we have the capacity to do that sort of treatment and diversion approach is important. And Director of Public Defense, Patrick O'Connor, said he's been working on that a little bit and talking to other jurisdictions. He thinks that, Thurston County is quite well positioned because of our pretrials, because of the diversion programs we've created in our pretrial services department. But the municipalities are in various states of having that type of infrastructure, so to speak, programmatic infrastructure. So we need to help them, I think, get coordinated so that things are done consistently across the county. So I heard sort of a mixed sense of enthusiasm for us taking the lead and maybe trying to, there was a concern from law enforcement that there be no gap if there really isn't a state fix by July 1st. I pointed out that they really haven't been doing arrests for possession under the old law, so I don't know that the sky falls on July 1st if there's no law in place. They haven't been using the one that is there, so I'd rather have a good set of laws on September 1st than a bad set of laws on July 1st myself. But it's something that we're gonna have to watch and work on as a plan B in case the legislature doesn't step up and do what we expect them to do, which is come up with a compromise.
If I may, speaking of the resources, 5536, it had as you stated, diversion treatment, a very robust framing. And the state budget included funding to implement the requirements of 5536. Now, absent passing that legislation, there is money at the state, and how they're going to be distributing the money is yet to be seen. If they don't have an umbrella, the mechanism as to how they can distribute the money, that creates a little bit of interesting process, I believe. Yesterday, I think it was a little bit of energy behind. There is money in the state. if we should go on our own, absent 5536, we should be able to access
Will we be able to grab that
precious
money?
money. Well, it's not that easy.
It's being a cautionary and saying, don't necessarily assume you're gonna be able to take the money that was allocated to implement a
Right.
law that didn't
Because
pass.
absent the law, there is no way, at least at this point, the state will find a way to, distribute the money. I think, I don't know how they're gonna do it. So I think I was able to say, well, don't get too excited about action resources at the state level, absent 5536, in an easy way.
The governor hasn't signed the budget bill yet and could very easily veto
Yeah,
those appropriations that were for failed bills. That's generally what they do.
Yeah, so that was a good word of caution on that one.
Sorry.
No, I don't have any questions.
Is anybody talking about, mainly from the municipalities, of the unfunded mandate aspect of changing all this stuff from felonies, just kind of cold turkey, to misdemeanors, which dumps all the responsibility on the municipalities?
I think Patrick was very clear yesterday in terms of resources. In terms of, whether it's a simple misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, it's still gonna be, an impact to the courts, to the local, judicial system.
District court and.
District court, superior court, and then prosecutors and defense. So that's what the emphasis, or perhaps we need to, as a region, absent 5536, need to concentrate on diversion and treatment. I think with through lead and pretrial services, we have a very good structure here in the county, but you're right. I mean, the jurisdictions need to come along and be part of that. And how we can probably enhance those programs, particularly pretrial, we need the jurisdictions to participate. And that's gonna be a set of different conversations financially. But you're right, that is the concern. But even, as I reminded the group yesterday, if 5536 would have passed, that would have been a reality. The resources, I mean, the impact on our local judicial system.
I've been asking Pat about I haven't had a chance to ask the prosecutor, but, is there an anticipation that the volume of cases shift to district court versus superior court? Like, is that balance gonna tilt? If you take all the, if possession cases were 20% of the felony caseload of superior court, and criminal cases are, 60% of their business day to day, I don't know what those numbers are, but I'm just saying, you take that's a significant chunk of cases you're now putting in district court. You're gonna need more district court judges, more district court prosecutors, more district court public defenders potentially, versus superior court.
But the same thing with municipal courts.
Or municipal courts, the ones that don't contract with.
Yeah, City of Olympia, that's the only one here.
The City of Olympia, we'd have to.
Well, we have a contract with Lacey and Tumwater to provide the.
We're gonna have to readjust our contract with those municipalities.
Right, absolutely. Well, it's a fee for service that we charge them, so.
Based on the history, well, history's gonna change now.
Since we're on this kind of sort of topic, did we ever get it resolved, the per case rate for the ITA that the state said we had to convert from, the complicated fee for service to just kind of a flat rate?
So we're working on that. The court, the prosecutor, the public defense, and the clerk have been working together, and financial services have been working together. They've pretty much determined what the rate needs to be. Got to be pretty straightforward because the law says it's based on the last 3-year actuals. And it cannot include any indirect costs. So we had a long conversation about what that meant. Basically what it means is the county will not be recovering all the costs as we had in the past. But we've got a rate. I'm working with Mark Friedman to update the contract, and I'll be bringing that to the board in June. And we'll start the new method on the 1st of July.
That was the legislative update.
Thank you. Some more to come. Okay, moving on. Tim, ma'am. Railroad quiet zones, and I believe that the residents also sent over some slides on their own, and they're gonna be providing.
For testimony this afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. This is a follow-up to the couple of briefings you received to the request for you to consider embarking on this process of implementing quiet zones and some of the railroad crossings here at the county. As a matter of background, we have 20 railroad crossings on local roads, and staff provided you with an outline as to what the process will be if the board considers going through a quiet zone process request, and included the somewhat of a budget from the low point of between 50,000 to 100,000 to close to $500,000 if it includes grades and even more extreme grade separation on those crossings. So I have offered my perspective to the board in terms of this is I don't want to undermine the community's feedback that has provided to the board. I'm more concerned in terms of if you build it, they will come, and if you are going to move forward on this process, then I will strongly recommend to you to form a program, because on assessing this on a case-by-case basis, you ended up the board having picking winners and losers as to where the crossing or quiet zone should be implemented. Also, I provided my perspective that this is a noise abatement program, a noise abatement improvements they are requesting. Operationally, there is not a need to do any improvements on any of the crossings because we have already done what we need to do in terms of operational needs when we have crossings between the railroad and vehicles on county roads. You also provided we're giving you a perspective last week in terms of the risk and perhaps the coverage. There may be an impact to the county. And also thinking in terms of the overall workload, and you are considering next week to add another big project to Public Works in the order of $7 million on that runabout. How this fits in the priorities, and would put the department in a very complex, difficult situation to prioritize a noise abatement project or program over the transportation programs that we need to deliver. So still my recommendation to the board is to not entertain this request, and I will stop there as a matter of introduction.
That was very well summarized by the county manager. Commissioner Menser asked that we follow up with how other agencies that have quiet zones established are ensuring them. So there are 13 quiet zones in the state of Washington. 12 of the 13 are operated or established by cities. Only one was established by a county agency. That was actually Whatcom County. We've reached out to Whatcom County to inquire how they are ensuring their quiet zone, and we have not heard back to date. With the cities, 3 of them are self-insured, and the other ones were all part of the city risk pool.
And so risk pool, that'd be like where we're at, and they're
There's
just,
a Washington City's insurance pool. It's a whole separate entity than the county's. Washington County's risk pool.
they wouldn't take any different point of view to this than you described the county pool, right?
I don't know how the city's pools operate. I know they have different markets, they have different risks, different insurers than what the risk pool has.
I guess, so the two questions that I had gotten was about, could the board look at this Atchison example and like sort of go a little deeper into fleshing out what the cost would be for the improvements, the needed improvements, and then what the question was about how are these other jurisdictions covering the risk. So those are the questions, and then I didn't know that you said there's a group that's coming to give public comment today.
I believe so, this afternoon.
Yeah, the same citizens that submitted the proposal.
So do we have to take action today? I mean, couldn't we just bump this a week and at least hear what citizens have to say?
Up to all three of you.
That'd be my suggestion. If we know that public's coming in to speak, we might hear something we haven't heard.
So if I may, the request they're gonna be receiving this afternoon is for board to consider having a subcommittee form to work with the staff, because I believe they have a different perspective as to how the risk has been assessed and how so I would like to pull that one slide that I read on their request, because they don't believe they agree on the assessment of the risk and the insurance coverage. And they believe they have other perspective as to how that should be managed. So that is really gonna be the request. And certainly, the three of you can wait and make a decision later, but even that request, I don't think is applicable. To engage the public works and a subcommittee with the residents to determine what will be the right risk the county needs to take in any particular action that you may be considering. That's where we have the professionals in place.
Commissioner Edwards, you had your hand up.
I got a communication, and I say that because I didn't talk on the phone. And they wanted to come today to discuss with, it says here, me, at your Tuesday open meeting regarding the quiet zone. Do they know that today we're not gonna have a discussion, an interaction? We're gonna we have a presence. The public is allowed to make a presentation. But do they know that we're not gonna have some kind of an interaction?
Yeah.
They do know that.
Yes. They contacted our office too, and we sent them the information.
Okay. Then, from the county's risk side of things, did you have something you want to clarify a little bit about the county risk pool's position on these?
The railroad exclusion, the owning and maintenance and operations of railroad in our insuring agreement has been an exclusion for many, many years. They added and add back in, so under most insurance policies, they exclude and then they add coverage back in. They did add back in for counties that merely ended up owning a railroad line. Oh my gosh, the railroad got rid of this railroad line, now it's in the county jurisdiction, what do we do? Are we gonna be covered that way? So that's why they added back in. So support structures, et cetera, as long as we're not operating, maintaining, adding stuff that a railroad would, we would be covered for that. Like we said, one jurisdiction, Whatcom County, does have a quiet zone. We reached out to them. The people that I spoke with, they're new in their position, so they didn't really necessarily know that they had a railroad or quiet zone. So they've reached out to their civil division to find out if they have any history. So they may not have known that this exclusion is there.
So they may have some coverage, but not through the county risk pool.
Possibly, I would.
Or if
think
they do, they have to pay additional.
Yeah, you'd have to mark it and to see, it would be very difficult to have get a coverage for just one area of risk.
I guess there's a couple issues here that I'm concerned about as we move forward. I'm your representative on the county's risk pool representation. And I can tell you, we're on thin ice as it is. So that stems from, you know, well, I guess I don't have to get into how we're a little, all of us are unhappy of about a $2 million rate increase. Isn't that what, was that what it was? 1.9 or didn't we just get a big rate increase?
Yeah, it was, last year was $1 million and I think this year was 900,000. And it's
So-
expected to facing an increase between 40 to 50% additional this year. That's the number that we received a couple of weeks ago.
And so I hate to add to that problem. So I'm going by what Tammy has said, that, you know, the county risk pool isn't gonna look at this favorably. So that's one issue. The other issue is, if we open the door, who do we pick next as far as winners and losers? So I'm not in favor of delaying this any longer, because if any group wanted to come to us with a proposal at a later date, I'm just saying, I'm kind of done with it. I don't want staff working on it anymore. And any citizen group that might come forward with any suggestion about anything, any way we do business, I mean, we can always entertain that. We're not gonna close the door and then say, and you can't bring this back to us for 10 years. Yeah, come up with something. You got something that makes sense, but right now, the difference is between what our staff and the insurance risk pool that we're paying into, paying too much into, I guess, and I don't wanna pay more into, has pretty well let us know that this isn't gonna be something that we ought to be entertaining. We have very limited budget to serve the whole community, let alone a very small slice with a special interest. I know that real estate values are affected by railroads. Your sleep pattern might be affected by railroads, but most places, you know, if you talk to people, they don't even hear the train go by when you're visiting them because they've become accustomed to it. So I'm not inclined to continue this on, not saying that they can't come back and give us another shot when they get more information. I just don't want staff spinning their wheels on this, because that's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now. But I think we're always open as representatives of the public to hear their concerns, and okay, you came up with something new, the feds changed the law maybe for railroads. Insurance companies all of a sudden had a change of heart. Okay, all the above might change my position on it, but I don't see how we can do this one financially, and if we do this one, how do we do the other 10 or whatever there is to make it fair for all parties concerned. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. I'm on the same page as Commissioner Edwards. I have a lot of concerns about risk insurance and the information that Tammy's been able to get. I feel that for a request like this, we would need to establish a program. Because if not, then we are choosing some communities over others. And then that leads into a whole lot of equity concerns and issues for me. You know, communities that have people who have the knowledge about these programs will be able to access it, but people who don't really have the knowledge, you know, they won't be able to access it. And it'll be on, as the county manager said, we will be choosing winners and losers, and usually what ends up happening is marginalized communities end up not being able to access these programs because they don't have the knowledge of it. And so for me, you know, not to, I've read through their materials. I understand, you know, where they're coming from and I understand their concerns, but we don't have the resources to establish a program like this. And if we're not gonna be insured on the other hand too, that just adds a whole nother layer of complexity, in my opinion. So I'm also on the same page as Commissioner Edwards on, you know, why are we gonna keep delaying this and keep having staff working on something? So,
Sounds like you have a 2-to-1 vote to shut this down.
Yep, sounds like it today, yep.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Don't leave quite yet, because I have a commissioner item for you. Thank you. Okay, commissioner items. Commissioner Edwards, do you have any?
I do.
Can you, if I may, before, can you inform the members of the public who are gonna be coming this afternoon, you have a contact of the decision of the majority of the board this morning?
I'll make sure.
So they're well aware,
And
They can still come.
no, they can still, but I wanna make sure they're aware of this decision
be
before.
reaching out
Yeah.
to them? Okay.
It has been a 2-to-1. No, thank you.
Okay. Uh, Let's see, a couple issues here. Robin, did you get contacted by the Lakes people about the rental car and stuff?
I
You got
did.
that
I
communication?
received information from Mr. Halverson and Mr. Carmen, and I am looking into that and will be replying to them.
And apparently there was something new and that has to do with computer charges or something new on that? Is that brand new?
I got most of the information I received was regarding the ER&R rates and fleet. However, there was also a question about how GIS rates are charged, and I'm looking into that as well.
Okay. Then I take it, Madam Chair, you're gonna talk about the big trucks business? Okay. The other one was Mr. Pettit's reference to REIT. And where are we at on that? Is there anything to that? Are we gonna be in a situation that's not beneficial, or what's the deal? Is Mr. Pettit not on the right track with this? But the way he's got this written up, he's got some pretty interesting comments, and I'm curious where we're at.
I don't know, he has sent so many emails lately,
Yes,
but.
there's a
So,
lot of
I
them,
think they.
two this morning, as I'm aware
So
of.
maybe one of those that it was related to the payment of the amendment. He made a point of the two expenditures in 2021 and 2023. I think on the 2021 year, he forgot to see the revenue. And the revenue is on top is when we got a loan from the ER&R fund that was put as a revenue on the REACH 1 funding, which is on the same column of the 2021 year. So that was the revenue, and the expenditure to purchase the building in 2021 is stated in 2021. In 2023, the expenditures that we're gonna be paying in June pays back that loan. So that has been discussed with the board many times. So that's one of the items. The other items is the reconciliation of the financial services, does on a yearly basis on every single fund. And that has also been provided to the board on the 10-year financial plan.
That one, it seemed like the allegation was that it's done monthly. Is that right?
The reconciliation financial services, no, it's a yearly basis.
On the,
I have not read Mr. Pettit's most recent email, so I don't know exactly what he is
okay,
now
well, That's on the fund, okay. On the ending fund balance by month, and, that's what he's making reference to. I'm actually more concerned at this point about the fund balance. He's made allegations that we're not supposed to spend money out of that fund to pay off this, so that's different item. What he's talking about here is that we're not gonna have enough money in the REIT fund as we move forward.
So I've given you a copy of the financial plan, and
Last Thursday.
we did that earlier.
So we're good to go there?
Right, just toward the end of last week, well, last Thursday.
Thursday morning.
And as I explained at that time, it's tight, it's definitely tight. And if the revenue does not come in as high as what is there, although I used a very standard forecasting method to get to my number, if it does not come in as expected, but I also said that the plan is to take the 250,000 of improvements on the fairgrounds and move it to the building reserve fund and not pay that out of REIT. So we have a plan for if the revenue does not come in as much, but we do believe it's going to hold, it's gonna be tight, which is what I stated last week.
That's it for me. I don't wanna hog the show.
Questions? Or, Commissioner Item? Sorry, no questions.
I don't, I mean, the only thing I thought of was just if there was any discussion the board wanted to discuss about the DNR meeting we had yesterday. But I'd like to take up your issue first, and if we have time, we can
Okay.
address that.
So I believe they met with you as well, I'm guessing
Yep.
from,
And I signed your letter that's been submitted, just so you know.
so.
I'm with you.
I haven't signed a letter yet, that's why I'm.
Well, I initialed mine
Okay.
indicating I agree.
So I got reached out by the Coalition Against Bigger Trucks. And didn't know this existed, it was something brand new. But apparently this is a congressional bill that's going through currently, or it's being talked about. And they're planning to add 5 feet to double trailer trucks. And so this coalition is reaching out to local jurisdictions. Apparently when this was brought back, Sheriff Snaza was a strong advocate because of safety concerns in terms of traffic and emergency services. And they are basically wanting to engage us. They sent a letter from the city of Lacey that they submitted in 2021, and I feel like I believe they're reaching back out to them again as this is being discussed in Congress. One of the things that they brought up that I found interesting was they believe this is an unfunded mandate because these bigger trucks have an effect on our infrastructure like bridges and our roads. And so that's why I brought Matt, or wanted to loop Matt into this, because I kind of dropped this on his lap yesterday and was hoping that, you know, and I just sent him the information this morning for him to look at, so I know he hasn't probably had a chance to look at it, but just wanting to kind of get staff's perspective on that, because I thought that was a very interesting angle that I didn't even think about, the infrastructure piece of things, and get opinion from staff. And maybe this is something that we send to our congressional delegation about. They also said they would be, they could do a presentation to the board if that's something we were interested in. There's a little information sheet over here. But yeah, that was basically kind of the item that I wanted to bring forward. Just, I thought it was very interesting, their angle that they're.
Could I make just one quick comment?
Yes, sir.
Being I've been around longer than the rest of you. If you go down to Oregon on a rainy day and you're driving along the freeway, I don't know about you folks, but my wife just about dents my dash and stuff like that when I'm driving, if I'm going by, one of those rigs. It's a very unpleasant experience and,
Yeah, they allow 3 trailers.
yeah, and that's what the deal is. So your rainy day, you got those 3 trailers and it's raining and it's a mess. You just about hardly can't see anything. So you either have 2 choices. You can stay behind them and go, 48 miles an hour, or you can go 60, but it's gonna take a minute to get past, and it's very challenging, I'm gonna say, as you drive by one of these rigs, I guess the best way to put it. So, I don't know, maybe if they're gonna change the rules, maybe they only get to drive them in good weather. I don't know. But it doesn't make sense to make it miserable on a lot of driving. And I will say that's the reaction I get, that it's kind of a miserable deal driving by, especially at night and passing a big truck. So I initialed your letter, ma'am. Just wanted you to know that.
I'd like to hear what Matt has to say. I mean, the heavier trucks make our roads deteriorate quicker, or?
So I don't want to admit that I was multitasking when I was sitting over there waiting for my turn, but I was. I was reading through these letters, and I thought the City of Lacey letter actually made some very good points. It's not just a matter of the length of the truck, which is problematic to itself, because everybody forgets these trucks, we design our roads to turn around certain corners, right? So now all of a sudden you got a longer vehicle. What about you design the curb return or the curb radius over there for a smaller vehicle? Now all of a sudden that truck's up on the sidewalk, and that's presenting a hazard to pedestrians. But Lacey also makes the point that it's not just adding to the length, it's upping the weight. There's the twin 33s, as they call them. Those are the 2 trucks that Commissioner Edward, or the truck with 2 trailers that Commissioner Edwards was talking about. But then they're also proposing to have one longer trailer behind the rig, and it would also be heavier. So I'm not seeing from like a preservation perspective how this could be a good thing for public works. Not just from the pavement perspective, but you have to consider all of our bridges are designed for certain vehicles. And so now all of a sudden you're putting heavier vehicles across bridges that were designed in the 1920s, 1930s. I'm not, unless I'm missing something, I'm not coming to a positive thing that could happen if we supported this.
Is there, I mean, obviously they're going mostly up and down the I-5 or whatever, right? But eventually they gotta get somewhere.
That's the problem, is you gotta get to all these warehouses.
They gotta get off the highway and make turns that are, and do, I mean, is it even legal or possible for these big 3-trailer trucks to make a safe turn?
I don't think anybody's looked at that. And so it's not gonna make it any better, I can promise you that. It's just gonna make it more challenging. You can have the best truck driver in the world behind the wheel, but if you put too long of a trailer behind him, he's not gonna be able to get around every corner.
It's like, I know on roundabouts you have standards, right? And I know like for emergency vehicles, some of them have a lot of trouble with the single lane roundabouts. And so anytime it's an arterial emergency route, the fire department will advocate for a double lane roundabout and stuff. So, but these trucks can't always control exactly where they need to go on a given situation.
And I'm not saying anything groundbreaking here. I'm taking the easy way out. This is supported by the American Public Works Association. So by no means am I stepping out. My opinion's not gonna, my perspective's not gonna be too controversial on this one.
What's the proposal, that we write a similar letter, or?
Well, I was gonna have, but Matt already jumped ahead of the curve. County Manager.
Maybe just additional perspective. The lengthier the trailers are, the movement through the local roads is an issue. But going back to what Commissioner Edwards was saying in Oregon, even if you see when you travel I-5, the second trailer and the wheels of the second trailers, have you seen how they bounce? You don't see that much on the first trailer, and that is the nature of the length of those trailers. And that is the issue and the impacts to the roads, is that vibration. It goes, and because that's actually detrimental to any road.
And the higher the speed, the higher
The higher the speed, the higher, so if you add another trailer, that pounding is even greater. And that's what sometimes in some of the freeways, you see the undulation on some of the lanes, mainly in the track lanes, is because of that pounding the trailers have on the roads. And it's one thing, it's just friction. It's not just friction, it's the pounding based on the weight. And that's what we've seen. So if you equate that pounding on state highways, they have the depth to their pavement is significant, which is designed. Our county roads are not designed to that level of pounding and weight. So that is a big issue, not just from the operational point of view, but also on the structural integrity of our roadways. It's just detrimental. I just want to add that perspective.
So
My
then,
humble perspective, interim county engineer.
okay, so then I guess we can draft a letter to our congressional delegation. And they've sent some drafts of different things and,
Yeah, if Sarah can give me a draft letter, we'll draft it and circulate
I
it.
thought that was your draft.
So the question that I have on this is the letter the city of Lacey sent back in 2021. There was a concern on a federal legislative effort. So is that passed, or I don't think it materialized, right?
no, it didn't materialize. It got voted down 57 to, it's right here. So they were rejected in 2015 on a 56-31 vote, so it's coming back up again.
Got it.
Yeah.
A lot of lobby activity, I'm sure goes along with this.
Yeah, and it's FedEx, UPS, Amazon, and a handful of other bigger companies. They're lobbying for this. And so another interesting point was, he said it's, because I asked about the trucking industry and how they felt on this. And so he said that basically it's split between the big companies in the middle and small companies. The bigger companies are supportive of this. The smaller and middle-sized companies are completely against this. So it's like a split but I think we see that again in the trend of the bigger companies are supportive of this just because of the availability to send this. But it was interesting on the unfunded mandate part that, they're going against, and it's interesting to hear this from Matt and Ramiro.
One more thing I thought was pretty interesting is they made a point about it's a safety issue too, because the heavier your load is, the longer it takes to stop. And I thought that was a good point that was referenced in some of their literature.
Yeah, to me, that was the convincing point. Like, so 22 feet extra, whatever it was, to stop. And they said that there's a study of the Department of Transportation that there a lot more crashes. And I mean, we're usually trying to avoid things that increase crashes and safety risks, not
the goal.
not enhance them.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I know we're out of time, so I guess I just wanted to see if you guys had any major takeaways from our education session. And, my takeaway was, I knew a lot of what they said. I asked some questions that I didn't really get clear answers to, but I did have a few takeaways that, I can't verify their accuracy, but I understood the message that was being communicated. They were going after the concept of a legacy forest as being on two prongs, not a valid distinction to make. One, because they said there's been clear cutting in capital state forests since the early 1900s. So they dispute the notion that forestry practices changed, at least as far as capital state forest goes, with the advent of the chainsaw. They were already clear cutting because it was easy to do in capital state forest versus other places. And then on the backside, they said well, we were doing plantation, monocropping for plantation until early nineties, but we're not doing that anymore. So when we cut your legacy forest, it's not as structurally complex as you think it is because we were already clear cutting and plantation foresting in the early 20th century. And when we replant, now we're not doing, it's going to be more complex and diverse because we're doing this more ecologically, responsible way of planting different things and creating a more diverse forest than just a single crop. So that was the main takeaway I heard. I also heard them talk about what they think the science around ecological forestry and those zones, like they say what we do tries to mimic what nature would do, and so they had the mapping of the fire frequency and what kinds of openings there would be, and that whole body of thought says that you'd want to leave 30 to 35% of the forest behind when you do forestry, and even though that's not their policy, that's the net effect of what they do is essentially right around that zone, and so they're doing exactly responsible ecological forestry, mimicking natural processes and nature, with taking into account all the fires and things that happen naturally. And so therefore, they're just doing a perfect job managing our state forests, and there's no need for us to worry about anything. And then, the other big question was about the new tool that Dwayne kept talking about. And when I asked, well, are these land, even if our capital state forest lands are being used to repay the federally granted trust, are they going to be eligible? I didn't get a clear answer to that. It sounded like he said probably, but there would be a lot of complexity to doing that. But then at another point, he said it's only going to be county transfer lands. I wasn't 100% clear on whether, maybe you guys heard it better than I did. I wasn't clear on whether or not all of the lands of capital state forest are eligible to be swapped out under this new program. I did understand what he said about the complexity of keeping beneficiaries whole. Are you going to keep are you going to route the money? If the new land that's swapped is in Yelm, are you going to route the money back to the Rochester School District versus swapping it over to Yelm? He seemed to say that the new law gives counties the flexibility to make that call. But obviously there's it's a complicated question. So that's kind of what I got out of the whole thing.
I think your observation is very spot on, and I know me and the county manager had a discussion about it when we were coming back, and one of the things I heard was the dismissiveness of the legacy forest, but then it was interesting then that another staff member brought it up and was talking about legacy forest. And so it was just like, okay, so yes or no, like,
And on that same point, Commissioner Edwards asked a question about sequestration, and I thought that the information given by the scientists was really on point. It was consistent with what I've learned about the younger trees pull more carbon, but the older trees store way more carbon, and there's like a curve, you have to kind of balance all those factors. And he said the older tree takes up the space of 10 younger trees and all that, but he said that for the Douglas fir, the optimal sequestration window is 70 to 140 years, which is, private foresters don't even get close to 70 years. And even DNR said we shoot for 60, 65 years. So he acknowledged that what they're doing in terms of forestry practice it's diminishing if your only parameter was sequestration and climate things, we're not behaving in an optimal manner on that. Of course, there are many other considerations than just climate, but and I think when the scientists said, I want everyone to hear, because there was a whole bunch of loggers and mill owners and stuff there present to listen, and the scientists from DNR said, I want everyone to hear this, what I'm saying about this, and I think that was an acknowledgement that the climate science piece of it isn't really in line with the forestry piece of it. I mean, we're balancing a lot of different considerations. So I appreciated him, I think, giving very straightforward information about that.
Yeah, I appreciated your question. Like really, I was honestly, I felt like mostly there as an observer and just listening to the different questions that both you and Commissioner Edwards and as well as Rebecca Harvey asked, which I thought were really good questions. And, you know, there was a couple questions where Rebecca asked that she never really got answers on. And so we were left kind of like, wait. But I mean, you know, I really kind of have that same outlook. It was, yeah, it was interesting.
I think it was quite factual, I guess. I don't think they were trying to trick us. I really think they were being as factual as they can. But the reality is, the only way you would do your climate side is to not log, basically. I mean, that would be about the only way to accomplish 100% that way.
Well, 100%.
Yeah,
you know,
but somewhere
I know that
along the line, there's a
I know
balance.
somebody's worked on theory, like 60 and 80-year rotation cycles and trying to make that economically work, and there is that model out there. The other thing that I thought was squirrely, in terms of the answer I got, was about the loan repayment. And, you know, I tried to ask, because it wasn't clear in the Board of Natural Resource presentation, so I asked, is the land that Capital State Forest is paying back, the money that we're paying back, connected to investments that were made in the Capital State Forest land to begin with? And he didn't really answer that question.
Or was it just a pot of money borrowed from the feds or something like that?
Well, because in the BNR presentation, they said, we got this land. They didn't say where. For all I knew, it was Walla Walla. I mean, it could have been anywhere. They said, we got this land and it was all, you know, destroyed and we had to invest in it to make it, you know, profitable. And we took that money from the federally granted land account because that money was generating excess money. And then in the 80s, the court said you can't do that. So they had to do this repayment. And there were 5 areas they identified for to support the repayment. But only Capital State Forest ended up being the one that worked. But the question that I had was, is there a nexus between who's paying, which is Capital State Forest, and where the money was invested? He said it sounded like he said part of it was in Capital State Forest, but was all of it? Wasn't all just here. I think it was in different places, but yet somehow we're the only one paying back this loan. And also when I asked him about the 2030 review, because what they said in the Board of Natural Resources was they're granted a percentage interest in cuts over a certain land. And he was saying that once it's cut, it's like taken off the map, which isn't exactly what they were described. So there were just discrepancies from what I understood from the Board of Natural Resource presentation and then what Dwayne answered my question. So I still have a few questions about all of that.
Yeah, and then the map that they showed us, the thin lines, right? Because the squigglies, as he called them, right? He was saying that, well, those are just gonna be removed, right? Like, they're not even gonna go into the factor of it because that's where they've identified old
But they're
growth.
never gonna log that, isn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of, they said they were gonna just remove that from,
But you know what that map was supposed to be, that green color was supposed to be all of the lands in Capital State Forest that are subject to the federal, the loan repayment trust.
yeah.
And I did not expect that to be all these squiggles all over the place. I thought it would be a block of land, because that was kind of the whole point. It needed to be this big block and they'd, you know, keep it simple. So how they got to this, you know, this really disjointed, squiggly set of, you know, I don't quite understand how we got from where we started to that, and how they keep track of that in terms of the money.
I have to say, I understood all the forestry practice stuff that was covered, including block assignments of these normal trees versus weeds and, you know, what we used to do is cut them down and stuff. But I really didn't get anything out of the financial portion of it.
And-
That was way beyond my capability.
I mean, and
I know how to start to
then
change
again, we're not telling them, right? Like, I mean, our whole thing from the very start has been like, protect these certain parts of Capitol Forest, right, that, you know, we consider the legacy
oldest
forest,
pieces.
yeah, and,
Left.
so, you know, that was kind of, you know, that's been our request from the very start. Like, we're not saying no more logging in Thurston County. That's never been the objective. Like, we've, you know, we've just.
Cut on this schedule or cut on
Yeah.
that schedule. I don't, yeah, it's,
We've, you know, we haven't really, we've just been, our objective from the very start has been like protect these certain pieces of Capitol Forests that, you know, whether they consider legacy, you know, but we do. And so just,
I got an email yesterday that told me that the Port of Allen voted after a presentation from climate justice activists and scientists. They voted to unanimously oppose a particular cut that's being proposed in Mason County. The Port of Allen commissioners.
Port commissioner?
Yeah, port commissioners.
Oh, okay.
A set of port commissioners for the city of Allen.
That's on the way
ALLYN.
to the coast. Yeah, that's a
Mason
lot.
County.
Pacific County or something,
I
maybe?
think it's Mason County, right, the border.
Belfair. It's like
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
way to
it's-
Belfair.
yeah.
They voted unanimously to pass a resolution to, kind of like we have, oppose a particular cut that's being proposed because of its community value and the age of the trees and whatnot. So I mean, it's just interesting that the Board of Natural Resources is gonna, I think it's gonna be hearing more and more of these types of community-led objections to some of the cuts of the older pieces of forest that are remaining in these.
I didn't see anything, although I thought the presentation was good, but I didn't see anything that connected to the Summit Lake issue.
No, because Summit Lake aren't older trees necessarily.
No, but I mean, they didn't even address that portion of what our concerns were with water quality
Yeah.
and the landslide potential.
No, this was about the fact that our letter on the Juno cut caused the Board of Natural Resources to pause that cut so that they could come and give us all that information that we got yesterday. And they intend to, I assume they intend to move forward with the cut at their next meeting, which I think is right now.
would it be okay of sending DNR a letter and just being like, thank you for the presentation, right? And we appreciate staff walking with us, but our objective still remains that.
Well, I would like to, and Dwayne kept saying that this was the beginning of a conversation. I mean, I think we need to engage with them as soon as we can
Yeah.
about this new legislative tool and how we might use it in Thurston County most effectively.
Because they said that counties had to show an interest, and
Right,
counties
that's
did
part of
not
it.
show, and so I feel like throwing our name in the hat as soon as possible, saying like, we still have an interest in this, and, this is.
Whatever
still-
letter is needed to kind of trigger that, like Thurston County's interested, right? We're interested. So then let's just get that to them and then hopefully we can start the dialogue of what the details would look like.
Yeah.
We might as well use the tool that the legislature gave us to the extent that it exists.
Well, we've had the field work done, so now we could do a little classroom coverage, I guess.
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Exactly. I think we do need to tell them thank you. I think that was a hell of a commitment on their part.
So, yeah, I really appreciate it, making the time. And I totally agree that Commissioner Mesa shouldn't have gone alone because it was a big group. That was the initial invite. It was for Commissioner Mesa to go alone with, it was a lot of.
You can see why I didn't want to do that.
But also, I'm glad the board agreed to go. I think it was, at least from my point of view, I learned a lot from the scientist.
Yeah,
Really,
he
for
was
me,
pretty knowledgeable.
I learned a lot, something that, not even my wildest dream was gonna be able to come up to that. But, looking at, I think the DNR had a script. And I think they stick to the script on trying to educate the board as to how, their practices are, strike the balance. But I think the perspective and the question associated with the loans and the payments, they were a little soft because I was totally confused as to, paying the back loans and then the review, what happens if you already paid the loan and there was another financial obligation? They said, I couldn't understand, I couldn't connect the dots on that. But also what they concluded on the PowerPoint that I reveal a little bit later, they said, and don't forget, there's $38 million in here that some of the junior districts will not be benefiting from the
Where
management.
was that? I didn't understand. The 38 million was from all the areas we asked
That's what, you know,
protection, or
because-
just, it's not just Juneau, right?
Because it is $38 million, they couldn't come up with a number. And they list Thurston County and all the junior districts. Because $38 million, I believe, is the value of the entire forest, timber forest.
I think it's the timber value of all the areas that we, if they did what we asked, which is not cut
That you
the
would lose out.
the remain, that would be the total
Right.
over however
Because
many
the
years.
Juneau couldn't have
No,
generated $38 million. So I was a little bit off on that because they just threw that at the end.
Yeah. and I
You know, the
didn't get a
$38
chance to
million,
look at the
and I was like,
paperwork.
okay, you know.
There's another financial component to this that I think maybe we're missing. I don't know that. And that is the junior taxing districts on the revenue that they may or may not receive, because if they did follow exactly what we were saying. So how much less does Rochester get, and where is that to be made up? The same way with maybe with the colleges, because some of it went to college funding, some went to school districts. So there's something there, but I don't understand what it is, but I'd hate to be the one that cut out, you know, $3 million to Rochester to build something, you know, that's all.
So related to the letter, I think is good. I can draft the letter saying thank you for the opportunity, but maybe the letter should be opening the door for the conversation.
Yeah,
for the
looking
new
forward to more
legislation.
conversation about.
I don't think the letter should be, because I don't have the technical merits to argue their perspective yesterday related to the Juneau cut. So I think the letter, if I may, should be just thank you, and also we'll welcome an opportunity to have a conversation with you, how we can explore partnerships based on the new legislation.
I could,
Is that-
as a
is
layman, understand if they said, okay, if we don't do this, Rochester, I'm just using Rochester, but any Little Rock, whatever, any of the schools, but a particular cut apparently supplies money to these junior districts all the way down their line. I'd like to know what that actually provides to them. Does it only provide 1% of $3 million or something? That's all they get, kind of like, you know, what we get for PILT, you know, payment in lieu of taxes.
Yeah,
What do we get, $1,000 or something? And some counties.
$1,000.
Yeah, some counties, no, I mean, some of them get millions. And so if we take a certain action and they were to follow that, and Rochester, which always has a hard time raising money, I mean, that's kind of why I'm saying that. You know, I would hate to contribute to their school's demise.
The complexity is that, like, so I've looked at this at the county scale, the Thurston County scale, and I kind of know the magnitude of the hit, so to speak. And it's maybe 3% or something like that, which if you just think at that scale, like any one beneficiary, and I've talked to the port and I've talked to the library and stuff, like 3% is not gonna make or break them. But the problem is, it's not uniform across the whole, the trust lands are so, from parcel to parcel, there's a different set of trusts. So if it turned out that all of Rochester's piece of the puzzle was all legacy forest, and so, you know, it wouldn't be, it's possible, I'm just, you know, hypothetical, it might not be just 3% to them particularly, because of where their trust land falls and what we're asking to not cut, it could theoretically be more to them.
Yeah, maybe it's 27%, that might
Of
make
what
the
they
difference.
get, and maybe that's, yeah, no, I mean, that's
And then who makes
absolutely.
up the difference somehow? You know, that's my concern, kind of initially. If I could pick one thing I could point to, kind of get the sense that they're trying to do the right thing. I thought the scientist, you know, really had his act together, and they've changed their ways. They've been doing things since these other 2 or 3 scientists that are the super duper experts that apparently started this. He named them. I mean, like, he must.
Well, what's funny is when they say like, well, we haven't been doing that since the early nineties, you know? Okay, so up until the early nineties, and why did it change? Because a bunch of activists and environmentalists, you know, and the HCP fought the Endangered Species Act.
Let's put it
and
in
they
a different perspective.
They spotted out and all that, so that's why you're not doing this extremely destructive
But
practice.
just in my
since-
lifetime, they've changed from my early days as a young logger, to where we had to clean the creek, okay? Make sure the creek is clean of all debris before you leave the job. Then it was, no, now you have to, put material back in the creek. Now it's only half of that because too much creates a blockage. So sometimes the policy of what you're doing, it's evident after a period of time has a detrimental effect. And so some of that also, I think, had to do with changes. You know, we were cutting all the bird trees that are left today. L&I made us cut all those down. Every bird tree was cut down. That's where I mentioned the high lead logging.
You've talked about the chemical application of the
Yeah, and
forest.
I was glad to hear that they don't do chemical.
And we know that that's detrimental, and according to, you know, the information that you provided, it's still being done routinely.
Oh, in the private forest.
Right.
Oh, every year, yeah, you can go out there and go to Vail and watch the helicopters take off, regularly for about a month.
So, I mean, these
But
things.
that's different
Learning
than-
about things, learning about things doesn't always make the
Oh, no,
policy
well,
changes.
that's
that are
how
needed.
come, and they said this, that private forests are shooting for 40 years rotation. Theirs is through a natural process, which
They
is
said it
gonna be
was 60 to 65.
65, yeah. So,
What I learned yesterday, Douglas fir apparently is the super tree.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's the super
But
tree.
it does the best here in the
Right.
Northwest as well.
Absolutely. There you go.
Okay, so with that, it is,
So we're gonna write a letter.
Yep, I'll drop the letter.
and we're adjourned. Thank you.
See you
Mayor,
too.
I think that letter needs